Chapter 559. Miss Abby, please bring me the dummy I made before, and the blood in the medical pod. The extraction code is H6E5. Thea could actually summon it with a spell, but she thought that if she gave the young lady something to do, she might stop overthinking things. Miss Abby saw that the separated monster was becoming more and more ferocious. She did not dare to stay any longer and hurriedly ran out. When she saw the little black man still standing in the same place, she thought too much. Is my true nature a black man? A black body with a black soul? When she thought of the unknown object Thea was fiddling with, she was even more certain of this. Thinking that the thing had been in her body for many years, she had the urge to take a bath immediately. However, she also knew that now was not the time to answer the question of the swamp monster and the others. She took out a 500 milliliter storage tank from the medical pod and ran back with the little black man on her back. She only had one thought in her mind, and that was to end everything quickly and let her be an ordinary person. You're quite fast. Thea saw that her face was pale and thought that her soul was seriously damaged. She comforted her with a few words and began the last step of the process. She forced the decaying soul that was about to turn into a monster into the little black man's body. The little black man's originally well-proportioned body expanded visibly until it was 3 meters tall and more than 2 meters wide. Its originally sexless body became even more ferocious and ugly. The decaying soul caused the little black man to crawl instead of walking upright. An arm grew out from each side of his ribs. The head that was originally so black that no one could see a person split open from the middle. A head full of sharp teeth roared at the two of them, showing off its might. Thea did not spoil it and directly poured Miss Abby's blood into its big mouth. Anyway, there was no blood circulation system, so it did not matter where it went. After that, it was time for the main event. Thea began to manually adjust the flow of time around the monster. It would take time to find the entrance to the darkness of decay. This monster was about to go berserk at any moment, so it was necessary to calm it down first. After setting up a time barrier with a ratio of 100, the monster was knocked out. When it woke up, it would have entered the darkness of decay. How is it, Miss Abby? Can you still communicate with this guy? Thea pointed at the monster and asked. Miss Abby sensed it carefully. The connection is very slight, almost indistinct. Thea nodded. This was in line with her expected goal. Miss Abby was destined to be the spokesperson of the dark decay. Now that she had cut her, even if the effect of the doppelganger was good, the connection between them would not be completely cut off. I know it's a bit difficult, but you have to communicate with it again. Only by controlling it can we understand what happened in the black decay. It is temporarily trapped by my magic. It is not difficult for me to destroy it, but the difficult part is communicating with it. You are originally one with it, and with that trace of feeling, you are the only one who can control it. As long as it inherits your original position in the darkness of decay and does not wantonly destroy it, all of this will truly end. Let it calm down and accept your control. This is fate. You cannot avoid it. Thea broke down the logic and explained it to Miss Abby. Miss Abby's manly personality finally gained the upper hand. She would rather die than die. After all, she would not be the one to suffer in the end. All she had to do was talk to this monster. Let's do it. Following the method Thea taught her, with the help of the inherent connection, she began to calm the monster that had fallen into chaos due to her soul being sliced. This was originally a part of her, and they were of the same origin. The monster whose body was unconscious, but whose soul was still roaring angrily, discovered Miss Abby. It was still the same familiar voice and smell. The split soul felt the existence of the main body, and like an abandoned child, it kept crying in the soul world. The manic thoughts were gradually calmed down, and the evil-looking soul slowly calmed down. Thea did not retract her magic. A time barrier with a ratio of 100 to 1 was just right. Such a slow flow of time could reduce some of its hostility. When it finally adapted and accepted it, and finally became accustomed to it, this process would cause a change in its personality. There were very few people with a slow personality who could be bad. At least that was what Thea thought. Miss Abby's evil side should not be seen by others. Thea softly told her to continue calming the monster while she walked out. As soon as she walked out, she realized that there was a lot of commotion outside. Uncle, don't hit me. I don't mean any harm. Listen to me. The one who turned into a small cheetah and ran for his life was Beast Boy. Behind him, the one who was so angry that he could not speak was animal hero Buddy Baker. Although he did not have the ability to transform, he also had the speed of a cheetah. The two of them were basically at the same speed, one in front and one behind. Thea was puzzled. She did not know what the two of them were doing. Fortunately, this was her territory. She pulled up the surveillance camera and looked at it. When she saw it, she almost burst out laughing. It turned out that after she took Miss Abby away, a few adults gathered in twos and threes to chat. The only two children present, the 9-year-old Beast Boy and Animal Hero's daughter, the 8-year-old Maxine Baker, were together. There was a slight difference between them and the swamp monsters. In fact, Beings Red was really interested in Maxine Baker. This 8-year-old girl was the real representative they had chosen. Animal Hero was just a side character. As the official worker of Beings Red, the little girl's attraction to Beast Boy was not ordinary. Beast Boy, who was originally very funny, used all his tricks to make the little girl happy. Thea's previous training seemed to have opened a door for him, and he mastered the essence of picking up girls without a teacher. This guy turned into all kinds of small animals to tease Maxine. The transformation of a tiger cub and a lion cub, the petite figure, the comical movements, and the human-like expression made the little girl, who was very friendly with animals, laugh. When Animal Hero heard the laughter and turned to look at his daughter, he saw Beast Boy turn into a small elephant and perform a squirting performance. "How dare you flirt with my daughter in front of me?" Animal Hero was furious. What followed was the chase that Thea saw when she came in. Animal Hero's pursuit of Beast Boy seemed fierce, but in fact it was not dangerous at all. Buddy Baker was a superhero and an adult. How could he make things difficult for a child? At most it was just a matter of beating him up. No one took it seriously. When Batman saw Thea walk to his side, he said slowly, "This place is not bad. It can be used as a meeting place to discuss problems in the future." "Ha, you're afraid that everyone will go to the Batcave, so you're quickly looking for a replacement, right?" Thea understood his thoughts and nodded in tacit agreement. To be honest, every time they discussed something about world peace and human development, it was really inharmonious to run to his cold cave to discuss it. It was also a good thing that superheroes had an open and above-board meeting place. Chapter 560. The matter of the venue was not important at all. The two of them settled it while chatting. This made a certain someone, who always had a meeting in the Batcave, secretly sigh in relief. "Can we counterattack now?" Animal Man and Beast Boy were still chasing each other, while Thea and Batman were having a serious discussion, forming a very strange scene. Of course, let's go to the first few places where the abnormality was first discovered. If my guess is correct, the black decay should be the tentacles that extend from those places. Eliminate the monsters, find the mastermind behind the scenes, and then suppress the spread of the green of all things. At the same time, rely on Miss Abby to find the passage on the other side and put her soul clone in. Thea counted with her fingers as she explained a few steps to Batman. These steps had to be carried out at the same time, and it was really inconvenient to have few people. In addition, coordinating the cooperation was also a very brain-intensive task, so these chores were naturally packed up and handed over to Batman. As a senior among the superheroes, he was indeed very suitable for this task. Just by standing there majestically, Animal Man and Beast Boy automatically stopped chasing each other. Batman said a few words about the next battle arrangement. Superman, who acted as a human flesh-spraying machine, also flew back. He had sprayed 7 or 8 buckets of green reagent, and his cloak and tights were stained with a lot of green. However, this hero, whose duty was to protect humanity, did not have time to care about the issue of clothing. Instead, he asked for the latest information. Hearing that the counterattack was about to begin, Superman also volunteered to participate in the battle. Batman, having Superman's combat power is enough. You should stay at the back. Thea was afraid that he would be infected by the Black Decay, and the loss of humanity would be too great. I've done my research. The Black Decay is spread by mosquitoes and flies, not by air. I'm already prepared. You guys wait. Batman arrogantly left the two in front of him and went to the back to change his clothes. He came out in less than 3 minutes. He was still wearing the black bat suit, but the material of the clothes looked a little familiar to Thea. Now Batman's entire face was covered, and not a trace of his skin was exposed. His voice was even more dull. Familiar, right? 2 years ago when you fought with Diana and that guy who jumped out of the sea, you guys defeated a guy called Black Manta. His combat suit was very unique, so I made a copy of it long ago. This suit is airtight, and even nano-sized needles can't pierce it. It's enough to deal with those mosquitoes. Thea could only give him credit. He had nothing better to do, so he decided to copy someone else's battle suit, just because it was unique. This was very Batman. However, his judgment was right. Black Manta's battle suit couldn't even get into his body, so dealing with some slightly more powerful mosquitoes was no problem. Thea had a divine body, so the Black Decay's rules couldn't affect her. Superman's body was even worse. If mosquitoes could break through his defense, he should just go back to Kansas and farm. Now that Batman's safety was guaranteed, the three of them were officially a team. The Swamp Monster and Animal Man also had their own immune system so they could follow. However, they didn't know that they had changed from the original protagonist to a supporting role. The rest of the group wasn't suitable to follow. Poison Ivy didn't have the complete Green of All Things ability, so the Black Decay could still work on her body. Zatanna's magic was extraordinary, but unfortunately, her body was still that of an ordinary person, so she didn't have a strong defense. As for Animal Man and the others, they didn't mention it at all. No matter how bad they were, they wouldn't let a 9-year-old child take the lead. Boy, I'm telling you, protect my daughter. If she loses a single strand of hair, I'll kill you. Animal Man changed into his battle suit and threatened Animal Man. Thea looked at Animal Man's frightened face and wanted to laugh. She resisted the urge to interrupt their affectionate farewell and introduced them to the others who were going with them. Everyone, let's go to Wyoming first. The mosquitoes and flies there are mutating too quickly, and the government can't suppress them anymore. They nodded immediately, and Thea directly teleported the 4 of them to Wyoming. The actual situation here was far worse than imagined. The government, military, and civil groups were all trying to kill the mosquitoes and flies everywhere. Unfortunately, the mutated mosquitoes and flies seemed to be endless. Everyone tried everything to stop them, but it didn't work. Instead, more people became zombies because of the spread of mosquitoes and flies. The place where the plant growth reagent was sprayed was also a key area. With a large number of plants, they barely managed to maintain a stalemate with the mosquitoes and flies. Looking at the overwhelming number of mosquitoes and flies, Thea felt a little disgusted. After thinking about it, she really didn't have any good spells to deal with these things. No matter if it was an ancient sorcerer or a modern sorcerer, no one would be so bored as to develop a spell to kill mosquitoes and flies. I'll leave it to you guys. Thea felt that she was responsible for coming up with ideas. She was just a part-time driver. Such a dirty job should be left to the strong guys. They didn't waste any time and began to kill the mosquitoes. Batman directly threw out a device similar to a mosquito lamp, which emitted a blue fluorescent light to attract the mosquitoes and flies. Superman relied on the combination of his supervision and super hearing to sweep a large area with heat rays. The above 2 were only considered amateurs. The Swamp Monster and Animal Man, who had strong backing, were much more professional. The Swamp Monster directly took over the control of all the plants in the area. Plants had their own way of hunting mosquitoes and flies, but they didn't cooperate before. With the arrival of the Swamp Monster, the plants began to fight back under his command. Many pitcher plants rose from the ground. These plants secreted a kind of juice that was very delicious to the mosquitoes and flies. The next step was to close the door and beat the dogs until they were slowly digested. The first to be hunted was the Venus flytrap. This kind of carnivorous plant in nature had exceptionally enchanting and beautiful leaves. Under the urging of the Green of All Things, the fresh and delicious leaves attracted mosquitoes and flies to rush up one after another. However, the result was that they were all digested into a pool of pus without exception. The remaining plants that secreted venom, produced paralyzing gas, and produced hallucinogenic gas could be seen everywhere. Animal Man was a little weaker. The Green of All Things here was too strong. He couldn't use his strength. Plus, he was only a temporary worker in the Red of All Things, so the damage he caused was far less than the Swamp Monster. However, he didn't just stand aside in a daze. Instead, he used his ability to communicate with animals to call over many frogs, geckos, and dragonflies to help kill the mosquitoes and flies. With the efforts of the four heroes and Thea occasionally throwing out fireballs, the area controlled by the mosquitoes and flies gradually began to shrink towards the central area. The tragic situation on the ground was slowly revealed as the mosquitoes and flies retreated. Humans and animals with stiff limbs and bodies full of diseased tissues slowly walked out of the towns covered in blood, from the empty and dead wilderness, and from the private cars that had collapsed by the roadside. Chapter 561. Can these people still be saved? Superman couldn't help but ask Thea. They've been dead for a long time. Thea took a look. These people had already died the moment they were bitten by mosquitoes and flies. What they were fighting against was not some kind of germ but the black decay. This was something that mutated from the source. Even if it was just a tiny bit, it was not something that ordinary people could withstand. The superheroes had a principle of not killing. Although these people were dead, they still couldn't bear to do it. Thea didn't care. But she felt that the scene was a little heavy and was afraid of dirtying her hands. 2 phone calls connected to the White House and the Pentagon. Thea, who was not afraid of exposing her identity, obtained the highest command of the entire Wyoming Army. With the help of military satellites in her supervision, Thea began to arrange for the troops to clean up the zombies. All the frontline troops were equipped with thermal imaging. Many mosquitoes and flies had the habit of hiding in the zombies' bodies. During the gap in the battle, Batman developed a device that emitted infrasonic waves to kill mosquitoes in a large area. With the help of local production equipment, he made 5 of them in one go and equipped the troops to kill mosquitoes. The heroes cleared the mosquitoes and flies in the air and on the ground. Under the powerful command of the army, they slowly and vigorously recovered the city. The entire Wyoming was severely damaged. A conservative estimate estimated that at least 100,000 of the 500,000 residents had died. The economic losses were immeasurable. The famous scenic spot, Yellowstone National Park, was even more devastated. Several canyons and waterfalls were occupied by various rotten animals. The hot springs, geysers, hot pools, and blowhole were all filled with blood, and all kinds of unknown black mud. Thea felt that it was a pity when she saw this scene. Yellowstone's scenery was not bad. It was one of the few American scenic spots that Diana liked. The young lady felt a little regretful that there was one less dating place. The heroes had a simple discussion and all felt that they should completely eliminate mosquitoes and flies. One had to know that even a mosquito that escaped could cause heavy damage to human society. Superman memorized the sounds of mosquitoes and flies and began to use his super hearing to find the ones that had escaped the net. Thea was also inspired by Batman's infrasonic wave attack. She directly threw out 2 low-pitched versions of the Banshee's howl, acting out what it meant to use a cannon to kill mosquitoes. She could be considered the first person to use such a high-level spell to deal with mosquitoes. The 5 of them continued to sweep the perimeter, while the ground troops steadily pushed forward. Finally, after confirming that they had not missed anything, they headed towards the source of the incident, a county town called Camber. This small city of more than 10,000 square kilometers, with a population of more than 30,000 people, and named after the first governor of Wyoming, had become a heavily deserted ruin. Thea called for the ground troops to stop. They were no longer able to participate in the matters below. A force of death hovered above the city, accompanied by a faint fluctuation of divine power. From the initial discovery of the mosquitoes and flies to the current counterattack, it was not difficult to turn a city into an empty one in less than half a day. The difficult part was the destruction of the landscape. Yellow sand billowed in front of them, waves of heat wreaked havoc, and the wind carried with it a dry and dead air. People would believe it if they said this was the Middle East. Who would have thought that half a day ago? This place was the intersection of the Rocky Mountains and the Great Plains of Wyoming. After all, Wyoming was the Native American word for valley. There was a desert between the mountains and the valleys? As long as the ancient Native Americans were not blind, they would not have come up with such a name. Then, only the gods had the means to turn the sea into a mulberry field and a city into a desert in half a day. If she was not mistaken, this was the territory of the storm god Seth that the poison vine lady Zatanna had mentioned. Thea could only be said to be vigilant against such an unknown god. She was not afraid of him. She even dared to roll up her sleeves and slash at Hades. This storm god, who had been dead for God knows how many years and was now forcibly pulled up by the black rot, was not a problem. Thea originally wanted to let Batman command from the rear. Unfortunately, this omnipotent man had remotely controlled his Batfighter to Wyoming. The swamp monsters could weave vines into wings, and the animal heroes could imitate birds. The 5 of them roughly had the ability to fly, so they continued to fly as a group. After flying for less than 10 minutes, the city of the dead in the center of the desert was finally revealed to them. Black and brown dominated their field of vision. The ground was covered with thick blood. The blood had completely lost its vitality. The bright red blood that symbolized life had turned dark black. White bone buildings could be seen everywhere. The bones of humans and beasts were piled up messily, forming a unique architectural style. There were also zombies walking around in the city. Many of the beasts in the mountains were also infected. Under the control of the black rot, both humans and beasts had abandoned their original habits. They only knew how to patrol the place without thought or purpose until their bodies were completely rotten. There were a few birds patrolling the sky. Those who did not have supervision could only see that they were not birds when they got closer. They were human heads with spines attached to the rotting corpses of the birds. A few of the rotting birds saw Thea and the others and let out hoarse cries as they rushed over in a frenzy. These birds did not fly fast, but their disgusting effect was far stronger than their lethality. They were all shot down by the Batfighter with a few bullets. They were not here to eat. Since they had been discovered, there was nothing else to say. Let's fight. Thea did not hold back anymore. She directly opened the battle with the meteorite spell, a mixture of earth and fire elements. Ordinary mages could only summon one to kill. Thea summoned 20 of them in one go and threw them densely into the black rot city. The meteorites with great kinetic energy and flames smashed into the places where the zombies were the most concentrated. Many of the rotting humans and beasts were vaporized by the high temperature. However, in the next second, more rotting humans and beasts rushed out of the city. In this territory of the black rot, the swamp monster and animal man's strength dropped again and again. Both of them could not maintain their transformation. Fortunately, Batman had already predicted this and made some preparations in advance. Batman's old rival Bane's poison canister was directly modified and given to the swamp monster. At this time, the swamp monster was fighting with a big canister on its back. It looked strange. The canister was filled with the plant reagent he invented. With a little purification, it could obtain the green of all things. If the tube was not removed, the swamp monster could still fight. On the other hand, Animal Man did not have such a cheat. However, he did not have as strict requirements for the environment as the swamp monster. He could still use 40 to 50% of his strength. Batman's fighter was not very effective in the face of the rotting humans and beasts who were not afraid of death. He chose to attack from the outside. The main offensive force was handed over to Thea and Superman. The heat rays that could not be turned were a little limited. Superman began to use his freezing breath to clear a large area. Chapter 562. Thea, on the other hand, cooperated with Superman's frost breath. She switched from meteorite spell to frost spell, frost rain spell, hailstorm spell, super large range ice cloud spell, ice storm spell, ice tornado spell, and so on. The two of them were very efficient. With a total area of more than 10,000 square kilometers, they directly applied a trace of holiness to the small city that was mainly brown and black. The frost made the temperature of the rotten and dead city drop by dozens of degrees in an instant. The various kinds of walking corpses that were already inconvenient to move, now without the support of the black decay in their bodies, it was even more inconvenient to walk. The guy hiding under the city finally couldn't hold back and wanted to stop the destruction. Seth, the god of storms and now the self-proclaimed king of decay, was made up of rotten flesh and bones. There was no living tissue in his throat, and he could only use the broken organs of many rotting humans to communicate his voice. Who are you people? In front of the supreme king of decay, what you should do is offer up your bodies, and I will bestow you with endless power. Oh, you also brought the green of all things and the red of all things avatars? It seems that you are not prepared to surrender. All the rotting humans spoke at the same time. Their voices were as unpleasant as tearing cloth, but their words made Thea want to laugh. This guy had eyes but couldn't see that she was a god. He probably didn't even know the difference between old and new gods. Perhaps only such an idiot would be bewitched by the darkness of decay, give up the dignity of a god, and become a pawn. That's right, although this guy called himself the king of decay, he was nothing in the darkness of decay, and was not much more advanced than those rotting humans. At least he was once a god, even if he was a native god. Now that he had become like this, even Thea felt sorry for him. What was even more ridiculous was that he wanted to recruit them, but after seeing the swamp monster and animal man, he immediately gave up on the idea. What a stupid and ridiculous guy. However, since he mentioned the swamp monster, Thea naturally had to give him a chance to show his face. She nodded slightly, indicating for the swamp monster and animal man to go up first. Who knows, maybe this guy would just blabber and reveal the mastermind behind the scenes. Do not overestimate the intelligence of these villains. Their favorite pastime was blindly competing. They were also afraid that the heroes would not understand their plans, so they would not fight until they had explained everything clearly. Seth, today is the day you die. The Tree Council has sentenced you to death. You cannot be pardoned. The swamp monster yelled righteously. The punishment of the Red of all beings is about to fall on your head, you monster. You will repent in hell for the death of all living creatures. Animal Hero also said, not to be outdone. Their declaration naturally drew the scorn of the villains. You're threatening me? Threatening a god? How many days has it been since you became the green of all things and the red of all things incarnations? How could you understand the principles contained in that power? I will tear off your flesh and blood. As the rotting humans spoke at the same time, a throne made of all kinds of bones slowly rose from the center of the city. A 5-meter-tall skeleton giant sat on it. Its body was covered in rotting flesh, both human and beast. Its head was not in the shape of a human, but more like some kind of insect. The 2 bloody holes in its eye sockets were looking at them with great interest. This is my kingdom, the territory of the Black of Decay. You're stupid enough to challenge me here. The skeleton giant Seth sneered with the help of the rotting humans. Speak, why did you start this war without caring about the balance of all things? Who ordered you to do this? The swamp monster asked according to the lines that Thea and Batman had prepared for him. I am the king of decay. As long as I want to, I can conquer all of this. Listen, I will send you a message through the wind of death. I am the god of storm, the lord of decay. Whether it is the ice field or the desert, I rule the land of death across the world. No one dares to order me around. Do you understand, you green freak? The god of storm did not use the rotting humans to send his message this time. Instead, he used the power of the wind to send his voice faintly discernible. See aside. This guy's Chinibu disease was hopeless. He was clearly a nobody, but he pretended to be a big shot. She stretched out 2 fingers and gestured the number 2. The swamp monster understood that she wanted him to use a second set of words. You're so powerful. I can't feel my green of all things. Thea and the rest's second set of plans was to show weakness to the enemy, so that he would speak more and reveal more details. However, Professor Holland's acting skills were not complimentary. Fortunately, he was now an amalgamation of plants, so there were no facial expressions to observe. Plus, the other party was also brainless. The swamp monster spoke as if he was reciting a script, which made him very satisfied. Haha, this is nothing. This is just a small part of my ability. But you are not bad. Your understanding of the green of all things is comparable to my subordinate Anton Archaean's understanding of the black of decay. Although it is far inferior to mine, you can be proud. The skeletal giant said proudly. As it spoke, it finally noticed something strange. These guys in front of it had a calm look on their faces. They didn't show any signs of fear, panic, or anything like that. In fact, it was because Thea and the rest were whispering. Batman had asked about Miss Abby's 8 generations of ancestors, and he immediately realized the value of this name. Anton Archaean is Abby's uncle. This guy is likely to be the mastermind behind the scenes. Thea did not have a deep impression of the process in the Kingdom of Decay. She only vaguely remembered that in the end, she had a fight with Miss Abby's father or uncle. Unsurprisingly, it was this Anton Archaean. Kneel down, you lowly reptiles. You can live until now because of your low status. You are not worthy of me killing you personally. Now your arrogance has made you give up your only chance to live. I am angry. I will punish you. The god of storm was completely annoyed by their disregard. This brainless guy stirred up his divine power. A sandstorm with high temperature was formed in his hands, and it was getting bigger and bigger. I will punish you in an unprecedented way. I will bury you here in this land of death. I will bury you deep, but I will not let you die immediately. This is what I want. The more the god of storm spoke, the more agitated he became. The tornado he controlled gradually spread to a height of dozens of meters. The heroes remained unworried. This was because the tornado looked scary, but its wind speed wasn't fast. They could dodge it if they wanted to. Batman and the other two could not use much of their combat power. Superman looked at Thea, which meant, "Do you want to do it or should I? I will deal with it." Such an idiot is simply a disgrace to the gods. Thea took 2 steps forward. She looked at the guy who talked big, but his actual combat power was weak and he did not have any self-awareness. Chapter 563. Thea had already gotten all the information she needed from the storm god, so there was no need to waste any more words. She started the fight with violence. This place had the characteristics of the kingdom of decay. Unlike Hades's underworld, which was filled with death, the fire, earth and darkness elements in the air had already reached a certain level. Thea wanted to use the thing that her opponent was best at to defeat her opponent. She instantly cast a fire tornado to neutralize the opponent's ultimate move that he had been holding back for a long time. Then, under her opponent's horrified gaze, Thea directly used the fire element to shape a fire dragon. The fire dragon tore the storm god into pieces in no time. "Human sorcerer, you can't hurt me. I'm immortal." The storm god, who was smashed into pieces, could no longer use the wind to transmit his voice. He used the old method again, which was to use the broken vocal cords of the rotting people to speak. The storm god's body was quickly reassembled. As soon as he finished speaking, the storm god reassembled into a humanoid shape. However, the bones used this time seemed to be randomly extracted from a human or animal. It was far less textured than the previous ones. Thea frowned slightly. It was a little troublesome that the storm god couldn't be killed. It was not that the storm god couldn't be killed, but it was backed by the darkness of decay. Unless Thea erased the entire law, the storm god would be reborn again and again. Erasing the darkness of decay meant that the natural world was completely out of balance. She definitely couldn't do that. "Human sorcerer? Is this the result of your eyeless brain's observation? You blind fellow, I'm the new god." Thea put away her playful attitude and finally became serious. Wasn't it just that the storm god couldn't be killed in a short period of time? How big of a deal was that? Countless anime and movies had given a good idea to the heroes who defeated the undying demon king. If they couldn't kill the storm god, they could find a way to seal him. Thea had prepared several sealing devices to deal with Doomsday. At that time, Diana had used a lot of them to beat him until he was left with only a single drop of HP. The sealing devices had not found a use for them, so they could be used today. Once again, she teamed up with the fire dragon and tore the storm god into pieces. "It's useless. It's useless. No matter how hard you try, you can't kill me. You're just wasting energy." Huh. Before the verbal canon expert could finish his words, he found that his half-recovered head had been placed in a cage. Then the woman who claimed to be a new god activated a switch. A dazzling electric light flashed, and he completely lost consciousness. An enhanced version of the quantized cage. It tastes sour, doesn't it? What Thea took out was the black technology she had plundered from the Sky's Eye Society when she established the Extraterrestrial Management Committee. The original version was a prison built to deal with superhumans, and now Thea had mixed in a lot of alien technology. She had specially done experiments. Not to mention a living person with flesh and blood, even a dead person like Boston Brand, whose cause no one could explain, could be trapped in a quantized cage, much less this unknown god. When it was torn apart, its consciousness would spread out again. The cage was ineffective, but when it gathered, it would definitely form an energy core. As long as Thea found the core and locked it in the cage, there would be no turning back. The heroes could only bury the Demon King deep underground, which was too unreliable in Thea's eyes. She directly opened a portal, and without looking at the situation on the other side, she directly threw the cage more than 10 light-years away. Want to resurrect? That's going to be difficult. As the Lord of Decay, the Lord of Storms, Seth was beheaded by her. The heroes worked together to clean up the remaining remnants. The entire city finally regained its peace, but the bustling city was no longer as bustling as it used to be. The landscape was completely destroyed. The layout of the city was gone. The drinking water was polluted, and the bacteria in the air far exceeded the normal value. This place was no longer suitable for living in a short period of time. 2 minutes after Thea reported the situation here to the White House, she received a piece of news that made her dumbfounded. Because the president was too worried about state affairs, he slipped and his head had an intimate contact with his desk. Now he was urgently sent to the hospital. The conclusion of the discussion among the assistants was that the superheroes should deal with it themselves if they had the ability. The White House was very busy, and there was really no one to help them. This old thing was playing the blame game. Thea made a round of phone calls and found that the vice president had gone abroad for a visit 2 hours ago. As for the Secretary of State, he did not come to work today. The governor of Wyoming was straightforward. He submitted his resignation to the state legislature an hour after the disaster appeared. In short, none of the politicians who could manage things dared to take on this responsibility. In fact, they could not be blamed. From the perspective of ordinary people, at least 100,000 people were killed this time. The entire Wyoming was in ruins. This was too big a responsibility. If it was a biohazard crisis, they could still find a company to be the scapegoat. Now that it was not a biohazard attack, all of them chose to hide without exception. Thea also had to help the local government deal with the aftermath. After the flood and hurricane, there was the problem of disaster relief. The Black Decay did not have this problem at all. Those who came into contact with it were all dead. Those who were alive were not in contact with it, so it was very easy to judge. Batman and the others retreated first to look for Anton Archaean. Thea, who was very recognizable and almost a household name, began to command the local people to help themselves. Injured? There were almost no injured people. All the victims were burned in high temperatures. No one had the aesthetic to appreciate the broken city of Campbell County. It was completely destroyed by the bombs dropped by the local troops. The police and the National Guard were all equipped with weapons to maintain social order and arrest all the people who took advantage of the situation to loot. These people completely ignored the principles of trade, which made the goddess of trade and wealth very unhappy. A few of the most ruthless robbers were directly charged with treason. All the supplies of daily necessities were provided by the Quinn Group. The citizens whose homes were destroyed could receive supplies to last for 3 days. Clearing the roads, supplying electricity and water, restoring mobile phone signals, and gradually releasing the network restrictions, Thea commanded the remaining local organizations until the evening, when the state legislature temporarily elected an acting governor to take over all the work. Only then did she fly back to the metropolis. After fighting for 2 minutes, the trivial matters had been tormenting her for several hours. After drinking a few mouthfuls of water, she asked the child left behind, Beast Boy, "Have you found that Anton Archaean?" Beast Boy was a little unnatural in front of the female devil. "Ah, found him. They all went. What's the name of the place they went to? What's it called?" Seeing Thea raising her fist to punch him, the green-skinned boy was nervous. "Yes, Batman left a note for you." Thea took the note and read it. "Carpathian? That's really far." Beast Boy said obsequiously. Sister Abby said that it was her family's castle. Her evil uncle must be there. They all followed. Maxon was hidden by Batman, leaving me to look after the house. "Big sister, can you take me to see it?" Chapter 564. Thea thought for a moment as she watched Beast Boy pleading pitifully like a puppy. There was not much danger later, so it was not a big deal to kidnap this child from his home and bring him to take a look. Thea thought for a moment. "You can come with me, but you can't run around." Beast Boy nodded his head like a chick chewing on rice. Thea glared at him and found that his eyes were flickering. She knew that he had ignored her orders. Thea, who could be considered a master in dealing with naughty children, naturally had a way to make him obedient. Strict education had little effect, and threats and promises were the way to go. She took out the latest mobile phone from her bag and waved at the naughty child. "Look, this is a camera, and this is a video. You can listen to music and surf the internet. What do you think? Do you like it? Beast Boy's bright eyes betrayed his true thoughts. Thea continued. Next, you just need to record the entire battle, and this phone is yours. Really? After Beast Boy got Thea's confirmation, he was overjoyed. He began to study the various functions of the phone over and over again. He had long forgotten about his previous intention of looking around to watch the show. The Carpathian Mountains were located in Ukraine, which was a little far from America. Thea searched for a long time before she saw the figures of a few people. She had to admit that they were quite strong. Even without Thea's participation, the few of them fought well. The only bad news was that there was a new force involved. There was a sky-blue teleportation wave, and Thea brought Beast Boy to the other side. They traveled thousands of miles in the blink of an eye. When she arrived, she saw that the two sides were in full swing. The location was at least 1,000 meters above sea level. The temperature was very low, but there was still a lingering stench in the air. Beast Boy faithfully carried out his mission. He took out his phone and aimed it at the battlefield to start recording. Thea looked at both sides of the battlefield. On one side there were 4 superheroes: Zatanna, Poison Ivy, Miss Abby, and a soul avatar in a cast iron box were standing at the back. Fighting side by side with the superheroes was a group of villains: Death Shooter, Clown Girl, and Killer Croc. The leader was Thea's old acquaintance, the mature girl Lila Michaels, and more than 10 agents of the Heaven's Eye Society. On the other side it was even more lively. The citizens were roaring something as far as the eye could see. All of them were holding sickles and wooden sticks, desperately trying to stop the group's advance. How could such a bunch of useless soldiers stop Superman? Thea thought it was impossible. She took a closer look and realized that these people were different from the people in Wyoming. They had not been completely infiltrated by the darkness of decay. They were still alive. This was also the reason why Superman and Batman had their hands tied. Superman was now blocking the bullets from the Sky's Eye Association, while Batman was hammering the Clown Woman and Death Shooter. For a moment it seemed like a 3-way battle. By the way, what are you doing? Where's Anton Archaean? Can't you just knock these ordinary people out? Thea was a little puzzled. The main character was not here, so why were they competing with these small soldiers? Lila had a good relationship with her. Her husband, John Deagle, was working under Thea. Besides, the Sky's Eye Association's top management knew that Moira wanted to go further, and the probability of success was very high. She could ignore Batman, but she could not ignore Thea. Amanda's order is to clean up all the remaining people here. The existence of these people is too dangerous. They must all be eliminated, Lila said in a businesslike manner. They can still be saved. Before Batman could speak, Superman was the first to object. Thea was a little confused. This was actually a matter of philosophy. Amanda thought that some people could be sacrificed to save the rest of the human race, while Superman was the kind of person who would save anyone he saw. The two sides were too different on the issue of principle. At this time, a few heroes who could fly over the heads of ordinary people and kill the mastermind behind the scenes quickly. In fact, it was not difficult. The difficult part was that the superheroes did not trust the Sky's Eye Association. They were afraid that these ordinary people would be killed as soon as they left. Of course, Thea felt that Lila and the others were thinking this way. You can control the first time, but you can't control the 15th time. If we withdraw today and sneak back tomorrow to kill them, you can't do anything. With Superman and Batman's intelligence, there was no doubt that they would think of this point. This was the focus of the dispute between the two sides. Seeing that both sides were waiting for her to clarify her position, Thea did not speak directly. In fact, she was inclined to eliminate the root of the problem. Many of the residents who blocked the way had lived here for a lifetime. It would be impossible to say that they were so slow that they did not know Anton Archaean's plan. They were not innocent. However, the position of the superheroes could not be lost. Thea could only think of a compromise. She directly caught a resident and began a thorough examination. The resident's brain, heart, and lungs were all fine. The only difference from ordinary people was that their nervous system had been transformed by the black decay. Their bodies were covered with black lines, which looked very scary at first glance. A light flashed between her fingers, and a healing spell was cast on the resident. The resident was like being thrown into a steamer. A large amount of fog came out of his body, mixed with a nauseating stench. However, when the fog dissipated, the black lines in the resident's body were still the same. The color was slightly lighter, but they were not eliminated. How is it? The Sky's Eye Association stopped, and the superheroes naturally withdrew. Superman asked with some uncertainty. Little Thea also has an illness that can't be cured. How pitiful. This clown girl who did not treat herself as an outsider was in the late stages of mental illness. This guy squeezed into the middle of the crowd and saw Thea frowning. He was indescribably happy. The young mistress naturally would not bicker with a lunatic. She rolled her beautiful eyes before answering Superman's question. If I forcefully treat him, his nervous system will be destroyed. These people's bodies are very strange. Although they are said to be alive, their bodies have already begun to decay. Although they are said to be dead, their hearts and brains are still working. Their thoughts are a little chaotic, but their self-awareness is still there. Everyone, I have an idea that the green of all things can take away the power of the swamp monsters. Their decay comes from the black decay. Then the black decay can also take away these things. When the time comes, there is a high chance that they will return to normal. She then looked at Lara. I will explain to Commander Amanda. Let's focus on eliminating the evil first. After this source is dealt with, I believe that we will find a solution to the remaining problems. She spoke very sincerely. Lara was not as violent as Amanda, who would destroy cities with missiles at the drop of a hat. She thought for a moment and nodded silently, agreeing to this plan for the time being. What the hell? Not killing again? Death Shooter was beaten up by Batman. His face was not looking too good, but the Suicide Squad had bombs hidden in their necks, so he did not dare to disobey orders. He could only curse a few times in annoyance. Chapter 565. Once everyone came to a consensus, the rest of the matter was easy to handle. After all, they were just a bunch of ordinary people. The several hundred residents blocking the road were quickly knocked down one by one. Poison Vine Lady took out many vines and tied them all up. Only then did the large group charge into the depths of the castle. Thea didn't do anything. As a new god, she wouldn't do anything to ordinary people. This was the pride of the gods. Her role was more to coordinate the relationship between the two sides. On the way, she began to ask Batman about the information he had found out. Miss Abby also added from time to time. Thea finally pieced together the plot of the Kingdom of Decay. Miss Abby's uncle, Anton Archaean, was actually a psychopath according to the classification of modern medicine. He had a very serious necrophilia plot. When Miss Abby was a child, this crazy uncle discovered the power in his niece's blood and began to study it tirelessly. In order to fully experience the power of corruption, he sewed the skin of the dead onto his own body and constantly fed Miss Abby sleeping pills so that he could draw her blood. Miss Abby's current silver hair was very beautiful and manly. In fact, it was all because of her unscrupulous uncle who kept feeding her sleeping pills. If it wasn't for the power of corruption that constantly gave her strength, she would have already died from overdosing on sleeping pills. Wearing rotten human skin and drinking his niece's blood, Anton Archaean had somehow obtained a trace of the power of the Black Decay. Like Poison Ivy, who was an unregistered member of the Green of All Things, and Beast Boy, who was an unregistered member of the Red of All Things, he also used all kinds of incredible methods to turn himself into an unregistered member of the Black of Decay. Hearing this, Sia only felt that these guys in the natural world were too careless. Every one of them had loopholes. This was not the untainted land, where they paid attention to the Great Tao and the heavenly divination. Couldn't they just patch things up when they were bored? There were so many loopholes, and it was as if they had discussed it beforehand. This incident was not complicated at all. In order to become an official member, Miss Abby's uncle spent a lot of effort. First of all, he couldn't kill his niece. If he killed Miss Abby, she would automatically become an official member. Then, his efforts of more than 10 years would all be in vain. Anton Archaean the psychopath was quite smart. He had fed his niece a lot of chicken soup about how big the world was and how she should go out for a walk. He had deceived the destined embodiment of the Black Decay far away. Even when Miss Abby was first awakened by nightmares, he was the one who suggested that Miss Abby leave the city and go to those poor mountains. From his point of view, sending Black Decay's incarnation to Green of All Things territory was just a matter of minutes. Green of All Things definitely had a way to trap her soul. He didn't expect Miss Abby to have known the infatuated Dr. Holland long ago. The two of them reunited in a poor ravine, and they achieved something good. The Tree Council had ordered Professor Holland to kill this woman many times, but he refused every time. This caused the Tree Council to turn against him and take back his power. The two sides had been in a cold war for a long time until Thea returned to Earth. Anton Arcane, who had sent his niece away, saw someone's Pacific Rim plan on TV one day. He was secretly happy. He was waiting for Green of all things to be expelled by humans, and then he would benefit from the Black Decay's invasion of the human world. This was his entire plan. The storm god Seth, whose body had been separated from his body, was tricked out of Black Decay by a few words from him. This plan could be said to be so crude that it was almost non-existent. However, it was this simple plan that caused a heavy disaster to the world. Everyone was silent and didn't think too deeply about the meaning behind this plan. A few who could fly rushed into the town, and the rest of the people rushed in desperately like wild donkeys. When Superman kicked open a wooden door, the final trace of the mastermind finally appeared. Anton Arcane, or the former Anton Arcane, was barely maintaining his human form and standing in place. He looked at the heroes with a smile that wasn't a smile. Thea couldn't use words to describe this person's strength. He was the same as the residents who had blocked the road before. From a biological point of view, he was still a living person, but this guy had turned himself into a half-zombie. His body was covered in layers of human skin and animal skin. The skin was sewn together with threads, but the stitching was very rough. Some of the skin had already grown together with his body, and countless rotten insects were drilling in and out of his body. Behind him stood three big monsters. They didn't look like humans at all. They were complete monsters. The one on the left looked like a giant skin mantis, the one in the middle looked like a giant worm, and the one on the right was an unknown object piled up with internal organs. Ouch! This is disgusting. Thea didn't want to take a second look. This guy was definitely a female hero's natural enemy. She wasn't the only one who felt uncomfortable. The heroes and the female agents of the Heaven's Eye Society, who had arrived one after another, didn't feel good. Even the psychopath clown girl pouted and clenched the baseball bat with an ugly expression. As for Zatanna and Lila Michaels, they were even more unbearable. Under the lead of Goddess Thea, all the women covered their noses and retreated to the second line. At such a solemn moment, it was better to let the male compatriots take the lead. Anton Arcane, you lunatic! You must be punished today. Batman was the first to speak. You don't understand the mystery of the operation of the universe at all. You are just scum. Let me formally introduce my new friend, the Third Hunter. There was too much rotten flesh on Anton Arcane's face, so it was hard to see his emotions. But from the analysis of his tone, he must be very proud at this time. The monsters behind him took a step forward at the same time. We are the rotten flesh that invaded the red of all beings. We are morbid and illusory bodies. We are the ultimate enemies of all living creatures. We are the Third Hunter. The three monsters made a dull sound from their mouth-like organs. They stood between the heroes and Anton Arcane with great momentum. You are the enemies of all beings red. Animal Man, who hadn't played any role, saw the enemies of all beings red. Without saying a word, he flew up, gathered the strength of a dinosaur, and punched the giant worm monster standing in the middle. The power of several tons made his fist sink directly into the head of the worm monster. This punch was like hitting the water surface. Unlike the splashing of water, this was the splattering of rotten flesh. The rotten flesh of various animals was like rain in all directions. Under the lead of Goddess Thea, several female heroes ran away with a whoosh. Several male heroes who were not afraid of hardships and tiredness also changed their expressions a little. Batman, who had unparalleled dodging ability, hid behind the door without thinking. Superman melted all the rotten flesh flying toward him with heat rays. The Archer of Death also found a place to hide. The only one who didn't hide was Killer Crocodile. Chapter 566. Flesh and blood flew all over the sky. In this horrifying scene, the heroines all stayed away, and several men were also a little uncomfortable. In order to go back and climb into Catwoman's bed smoothly, they all chose to attack from a distance. Batman raised his hand and fired 2 bat darts, which blew up the giant mantis monster on the left and covered the ground in pus. Death Shooter started to finish it off. Unfortunately, this thing wasn't fatal at all. No matter how good his marksmanship was, it was useless. Their strength was slightly weaker. Fortunately, Killer Crocodile was at the forefront and took a line of damage. The three of them fought the praying mantis monster and barely maintained a draw. The worm monster in the middle was being attacked by Animal Man and the swamp monster. The Black Decay here was also serious. The two of them could not even use 30% of their strength, so it was very difficult for them to fight. Superman, who was on the right, had the absolute upper hand. Heat Ray and Frost Breath were beating up the Viscera monsters. However, these guys seemed to have found a secret door in Svalbard's red. Every time a piece of rotten meat was frozen or melted, it would be replenished. Relying on its powerful self-healing ability, it temporarily stalled Superman. The remaining male agents of the Heavenly Eye Society distributed their firepower to the three monsters. Let's go after Anton. The ladies hid outside and watched for a while. They found that Anton Arcane was blocking the heroes with the help of the three big monsters, and he himself was running to the back. Sia felt that she was partly responsible for this ecological imbalance. How could she watch the culprit escape? She told Lara and directly used a teleportation spell to bypass the three monsters blocking the way. Then she led the female heroes, the female villains, and the female agents to chase after them. They did not need to use supervision to follow the stench. Anton Arcane, you beast. Miss Abby ran quite fast. She saw Anton's figure at the corner and raised her hand to shoot. The other party did not stop at all. Instead, he ran faster. Be careful of ambushes. Thea warned them and slowed down at the same time. The enemy was familiar with the terrain and was able to shake them off several times. Thea's magic also hit the enemy a few times, but unfortunately, it was not very effective. This kind of psychopath had a high resistance to abnormal conditions and was almost immune to magic that affected the mind. He had many layers of skin on his body, so his elemental resistance was not low. The indoor environment was not suitable for flying, so Thea could not catch up to him. Everyone followed him and turned left and right. They came to the door of a basement. Anton Arcane stopped. He did not even look at Thea and the others. Instead, he asked Miss Abby with great interest, "My dear niece, behind this door is the darkness of decay. This is the real world that I spent 30 years to communicate with. You and all of you. Do you dare to follow me?" The other party laughed like a villain, but when he laughed, his voice was sharp and thin, not pleasant at all. "Thank you for bringing us here. I had a few plans in mind." Thea stopped running and panting. In Anton Arcane's inexplicable eyes, a magic rope tied him up. Thea's hard pursuit was of course fake. The other party stayed here fearlessly instead of finding a place to hide. Apart from the conclusion that he was a brainless villain, there was only one possibility left. The other party still had a trump card in his hand. The previous three hunters were just hired thugs, and they were still far from the trump card. On the way to the chase, Thea thought about the connection. The other party could escape with the help of the darkness of decay, and even take advantage of the different flow of time between the two worlds to trick the pursuers. It was not difficult to guess, so she pretended to be helpless and chased all the way. Anton Arcane's resistance was not low, but it did not mean that he was not afraid of magic. Even Thea could not completely see through the ever-changing characteristics of magic, let alone this psychopath. Thea turned to Miss Abby and asked, "Is the darkness of decay behind the door?" She was pretending. Miss Abby was an ordinary person. After such a high-intensity running back and forth, she was really out of breath. She tried to adjust her breathing, and it took her a while to answer, "It should be. You can't stop the darkness of decay. Only my niece or I can solve all the problems. Hey, if my niece doesn't want to go in, you can only let me go. Let me go in." Anton Arcane, who was tied up, said proudly. It could be seen that he had thought about these words repeatedly, and the order was very reasonable. If Miss Abby did not want to go in herself, in order to stop the spread of the darkness of decay, letting him go was the only option. Thea gave the people of the Skies Eye Society a reassuring look, indicating that she was prepared. Miss Abby also showed a grateful expression. With her supervision, she found the decaying clone in the box in the outside world. Thea silently used the land replacement spell. With a flash of blue light, She directly teleported the box. When they opened the box and revealed the decaying clone inside, the people of the Skies Eye Society only felt inexplicably strange. Anton Archaean's face was full of surprise. Thea didn't care about him. She muttered to herself over there, repeatedly saying things like impossible. And how could it be possible? A fireball blasted the door. What appeared in front of them was not a basement, but a deep and dark void. Miss Abby began to communicate with the clone. The clone walked in shakily and finally disappeared into the void. Thea looked at Miss Abby a little nervously. She was still very confident about her plan, but it was better to be safe than sorry. If the darkness of decay did not recognize this fake, she could not go in herself. Fortunately, after 10 nervous minutes, Miss Abby finally woke up from her daze. I am free. It inherited the darkness of decay. I am finally free from my fate, Miss Abby said incoherently. Immediately stop the spread of the darkness of decay and withdraw the power of the residents outside, Thea immediately ordered. Wasn't this the reason why they went through so much trouble? Fortunately, nothing went wrong. Miss Abby connected again. Her clone seemed to have given some orders on the other side. The few people present didn't feel anything. Unlicensed Poison Ivy and Anton Archaean felt it the most. She, who didn't have any plants to control, summoned the plants again. Anton Archaean, who looked like a strong man before, shrank visibly. His strong body began to shrink rapidly. Large lumps of rotten flesh flowed out of his body like butter. Anton Archaean quickly shrank from a 2-meter-tall man to a skinny and lifeless old man. What should we do with this guy? Lara asked. If they dragged him to the International Court of Justice and told everyone that the current disaster on Earth was caused by him alone, and that there was no organization or gang behind the scenes, they would have to believe it. And it looked like he could die at any time. Chapter 567. He won't live for long. Thea saw that the old man was on his last breath, and she couldn't think of a good way to deal with him. Let me in, let me in. His body shrank, and the binding effect of the magic rope also disappeared. After all, it wasn't a fairy rope, and it didn't have the ability to shrink and shrink with the human body. The old man was freed and began to tremble as he tried to climb into the door. Clown Girl was very happy and wanted to hit him with a bat, but Lara hurriedly stopped her with a look. This person was very difficult to deal with. What crime should she use to punish him? Destroy the environment? The current law couldn't punish him at all. Shooting or imprisoning him was actually not appropriate. Thea thought deeper. This guy was too deeply infected by the black decay. Now that Miss Abby had taken back her power, Anton Archaean's human soul had been completely contaminated. The current situation was that as soon as he died, he would immediately report inside. Killing him would be fulfilling his wish. Although the black decay had changed hands, the clone inside didn't have a brain at all. It was hard to say whether Anton Archaean would fight back or not. This made her unable to make a decision for a long time. She couldn't make a decision, but she couldn't follow his wishes and let the old man slip in. Thea summoned a magic rope and tied the old man to a tree. She was afraid that he would suddenly die, so she gave him 2 injections of nutrient solution. She was going to wait for them to finish studying before deciding on the final treatment plan. As the black decay shrank, the third hunter, who relied on his own meat to deal with the heroes, was quickly beaten into a pile of mud. The heroes also rushed in. How to deal with the old man was also difficult for Superman and Batman. In the end, under Thea's suggestion, they threw Anton Archaean into the tree parliament and let the Green of all things deal with him. The matter was finally settled and everyone went back home. Thea also sent Beast Boy back to San Francisco, but this guy relied on Thea's familiarity and wanted to transfer to California, saying that he wanted a change of environment. Are you interested in Animal Hero's daughter? Thea guessed the boy's intentions with a little guess. Big sister is so wise. Little Beast laughed awkwardly. This was not a big deal. Thea thought about it and picked up the phone to help him with the admission procedures. As for what he could do in the future, it was up to him. After that, she hurried to Louisiana, where the swamp monster and Miss Abby were preparing to live in seclusion. Professor Holland, are you sure you want to do this? Thea asked. The swamp monster was inspired by Miss Abby's soul division. If she could do it, so could it. A man and a woman were better than a monster and a woman together. To be honest, he was a little tired of being a swamp monster. If he could be free without affecting the overall situation, it would be a happy ending for everyone. I'm very sure. Thea had always felt that she owed him a favor. She wanted him to stay away from trouble and live with the person he loved. No matter how she looked at it, this was repaying the help he had given her in the past. She divided the soul again and spent a lot of effort to create a clone of the swamp monster. In the afterglow of the setting sun, they watched the swamp monster slowly walk into the forest. The two of them held hands to thank Thea. Thea also felt a sense of accomplishment. She changed the destined Lao Yin flying together to fly together. She felt a hint of karma from it. If the swamp monster hadn't helped her activate her bloodline, Thea wouldn't have helped him divide the soul today. It was hard to say who helped who. Others had a happy life, but Miss Abby's life still had to go on. The Black Decay had hit the global economy hard. Nowadays, a gunshot on Wall Street could set the world economy back by a month. Not to mention this kind of destructive disaster comparable to a natural disaster. The economic problem was actually a small problem. The Earth's resources were used less and less. If they continued to overexploit, the scale of the next disaster would be even bigger. After considering several aspects, it was urgent to start the early stage of interstellar travel and interstellar resource collection. Thea called the secretary and began to read the various materials collected by Luthor. Although Lex Luthor was in prison, many of his experimental notes were left behind. This human, who was called a Level 9 intelligence by Brainiac, was indeed extraordinary. He didn't have a spaceship and couldn't survive in space, but by relying on satellite exploration, digital modeling, and environmental analysis, he had roughly calculated the resource allocation of the entire solar system and made a detailed plan. Thea, who had acquired all of Luthor's high-end enterprises and secretaries, could naturally make some arrangements on this basis. After studying various materials for 2 days, Thea had confirmed the next step, which was to develop Mars. This star was twice the diameter of the Moon and half the size of the Earth. Its surface was covered with sand dunes and there was no stable liquid water. It could be said to be a desertified planet. However, humans didn't just name this place Mars. Countless hematite ores rose and fell one after another among the sand dunes. All kinds of rare metals were important materials needed for the Pacific Rim project. This place could be built as a resource collection point and an outpost for human space travel. What were resources? In modern society, even a 3-year-old child knew that resources were money. It wasn't difficult to persuade countries to participate if there were benefits. The difficult part was the early exploration. Was there life on Mars? This scientific argument had been debated for 20 years. Thea didn't dare to tell them that not only were there people on Mars, but they were also very fierce. The fiercest one of them could wrestle with Superman. Speaking of which, Earthlings were really blessed. A group of Martians with the ability to write 400 words lived 50 million kilometers away from Earth. These Martians, who had terrifying abilities without basking in the sun, had all died inexplicably. Only one of them had come to Earth, and this one of them was the most loving and kindest one. If they didn't die, Thea felt that the Earth would have returned to a slave society 800 years ago. It was better to investigate the situation on Mars first so that they could persuade countries later. Thea could go by herself, but she thought that there was a guide here, so it was better to ask him to come along. In the director's office of the Super Investigation Department, the Martian hunter disguised as an ordinary person had just taken a sip of water when he saw Thea walk out. Your spiritual attainment seems to have improved. Tell me, what's the matter? The Martian hunter didn't know what a new god was, but he felt that Thea was a little mysterious. Haha, Uncle Ranjen. This is why I'm looking for you. Thea told him her thoughts from beginning to end, especially mentioning the huge impact it would have on human civilization. The Martian hunter didn't look too good. He asked hesitantly, "Can we change to another planet?" Thea thought for a while. Pluto is fine, but it's too far away from the Earth. It's not easy to influence public opinion. Mars doesn't have this problem. The internet has been calling for the development of Mars for many years. In fact, Thea knew that developing Mars was like digging up the graves of their ancestors. Even after a few centuries, most of the Martian hunters' family members were burned to ashes, and their ashes were still buried in the depths of the planet. Thea didn't want to force him, but the resources of Mars were really important. Before humans found a new substitute, steel would always be the most important resource. In the future interstellar trade, aliens wouldn't recognize dollars or euros. For the Earth, which had just entered the interstellar civilization, material exchange was the mainstream. Chapter 568. The demand for various metals would increase in the future, and the development of Mars was essential. Regardless of whether the Martian hunter was willing or not, unless he stood against the entire human race, he would have to face this. If he was willing, he could move the bodies of his loved ones to Earth. If he was unwilling, Thea could also help him set up a seal. Other than big shots like Darkseid, ordinary people would not be able to break her seal. Thea did not say these words. The key problem with the Martian hunter was his heart. Earth was so close to Mars and he could go back at any time if he wanted to. It was just that he had not gone back for centuries, not even once. It was a little difficult to help him rebuild his confidence and get rid of his fear of fire. Ordinary people would be able to recover after a few counseling sessions, but he was different. His strong psychic ability magnified his fear of fire, and his fear of fire had affected him from the spiritual level to the physical level. Thea could not solve this problem. The Martian hunter's resistance was too high, and even magic was useless. He could only rely on himself. After a full half an hour, the Martian hunter said with a tired face, "When are you going?" After receiving Thea's wish to leave immediately, he hesitated for a moment, gritted his teeth, and decided to go. The two of them did not inform anyone. Thea had the suggestion spell, and the Martian hunter had the invisibility spell. The two of them did not alert anyone and flew directly out of the atmosphere. To them, the distance of 55 million kilometers was not much longer than the time it took for them to travel from New York to Philadelphia. Looking at the familiar yet strange planet, the Martian hunter was indescribably sad. He had removed his disguise during the flight. Apart from the last time she saw him in his spiritualized form when he wiped out Hercules' crazy thoughts, this was the first time Thea had seen the Martian hunter in his true form on the material plane. The Martian hunter was 2 meters tall, with dark green skin and a purple coat and cape. Instead of flying, he landed on the ground. In this desert environment, Thea's Gucci dress that she wore when she came out of the office was a little eye-catching. As she had shares in several major luxury companies in the world, they would give her a batch of clothes, shoes, and bags every month. Now that the Martian hunter was so depressed and dressed so formally, Thea had to correct her attitude. With a thought, she changed into the clothes of the new creator planet. She named it the divine robe of God's punishment. Unlike the god's armor made by Zeus, Thea chose this robe mainly because of the hood on the robe. Wearing the hood could not only block the wind and sand, but also because it covered most of her face, making her look very mysterious. It was very suitable for this kind of solemn environment. The two of them walked on the ground with heavy footsteps. The Martian hunter was reminiscing about the past. Sometimes he would talk to himself and introduce the past. There used to be a city there, and the people there were very kind. The northwest direction was once attacked by a space monster. At that time 20 of us killed it. Its corpse is still buried underground. This is my home. My father, mother, wife, and daughter all live here. Thea followed him all the way with her hands behind her back. The Martian hunter would talk about the past from time to time. In Thea's eyes, this was just a desert. God knows how he determined the specific location. When the two of them stopped in front of a stone pit, the tall Martian hunter burst into tears and knelt on the ground sobbing. This used to be his home. It used to be the strongest harbor in his heart. Unfortunately, it was all gone now. Unlike Superman, the Martian hunter had lived for hundreds of years. He had lived alone on Earth for hundreds of years. Even though his lifespan was still long, his mentality was already old. Thea did not know how to comfort him. She was not good at this kind of thing. While waiting, she activated her supervision and looked at the planet's mineral resources. Just as she was looking around aimlessly, a grayish-white metallic luster attracted her attention. When she was about to take a closer look, the metallic body emitted a special wave that blocked her probing. It would be strange if there was no abnormality. Thea pulled the Martian hunter, who was still crying silently. Uncle Ronjen, there is an abnormal object 19,000 meters to the south. It doesn't look like a natural creation. The Martian hunter, who was full of question marks, saw her serious look and stopped being pessimistic. Unlike the people on Earth who had 5 senses, the Martians had 9 senses. His searching ability was not inferior to Superman's. Following the direction Thea was pointing at, he took a closer look. His expression changed drastically, and he flew over instantly. Thea could only follow closely. Just as she was about to ask what it was, she saw the Martian hunter use a large area of psychic impact. This person used his psychic ability to clean up the piles of debris outside the grayish-white object. At this time, Thea could also see that the grayish-white object was a spaceship. Judging from its size, it was a small single-person spaceship. It was just that it had been buried in the rocks before. Coupled with the passage of time and the dust of this planet, it looked gray and inconspicuous. This is... Thea saw the Martian hunter's expression as if he had seen a ghost and already had some guesses. The result was not surprising. This is a Martian spaceship. Judging from the traces at the scene, the spaceship has been here for less than 20 years. How is this possible? I should be the last Martian. The Martian hunter's expression was very interesting. Fear, surprise, disbelief, and a trace of hope. All kinds of emotions were mixed together. This spaceship was very strange. It seemed to be using some kind of psychic power to prevent her from prying. Thea could not figure out how such an idealistic thing like psychic power could be applied to a technological spaceship. This was completely different from her inherent knowledge system. Looking at the Martian hunter's confused expression, she could only do it herself. She was not dismantling the spaceship, just opening the cockpit. This small matter was not difficult for her. There's no one inside. Looking at the size of this cabin, it doesn't look like it's for a tall person like you. Is this a spaceship for you young people? The display is still charged. Come and see if there are any messages left. Thea did not speak Martian, but the light ring had a translation function. However, the ready-made Martian was right in front of her, and she was too lazy to take it out. The Martian hunter took 2 deep breaths and began to read the words on the display. As he read, he muttered to himself, "This spaceship returned to Mars 20 years ago?" The spaceship's recorder shows that the other party is investigating the real cause of the Martian's extinction. The owner of this spaceship is Megan Moss? Looking at the Martian hunter's face alternating between white and green, Thea suspected that he would suddenly transform into a white Martian. She asked curiously, "This Megan is? She should be my niece, but the Moss family is very large. She has more than 300 brothers and sisters of the same generation, including her cousins. I'm a little dizzy, and I'm not very sure if this is the family that I remember." Chapter 569. The Martian hunter said a number in an uncertain tone. Thea's eyes widened. Their way of reproduction was indeed very different from that of humans. There were more than 300 siblings of the same generation. As an elder, it was indeed a very confusing thing. Did your niece say where she went? Thea had already come into contact with several members of the Young Titans. Whether it was Damian Raven or Beast Boy whom she had met a few days ago, they had all given her a good impression. The niece of the Martian hunter would be the young superhero codenamed Martian Maiden. The Martian hunter was more concerned than she was. He carefully browsed through it twice and shook his head. She only mentioned that she went to the east to search, but there was no follow-up information. This is too strange. She's still young, and her ability is not enough to fly in the universe. The two's mission changed from exploring the planet's mineral resources to searching for people. Thea followed the Martian hunter and searched for 5 minutes, but they did not see anyone. This planet was too desolate and the climate was too harsh. On Earth, there was a saying that the sun rose in the east and the rain in the west. On Mars, this planet was only 1/6 the size of Earth. The two of them circled the planet 3 times, and the whole planet was covered in sand and wind. Too much time had passed. The Martian hunter searched for a long time with his 9 senses, but there was no trace of her. He could only turn around and look at Thea. After knowing her for so many years, this strange earthling always had some methods that he did not understand. "Send me your niece's image." The Martian hunter did not know what to do. He lowered his head and pondered for a long time before sending a photo to Thea through the telepathic channel. He said a little embarrassedly, "It's been too long. I don't have a deep impression of her." Thea closed her eyes and carefully looked at the photo. She almost laughed out loud. The Martian hunter did not remember what his niece looked like. It was really difficult to find this niece among the hundreds of juniors after a few centuries. He did not know what Thea's intention was, but he sent 5 photos in one go. With a name and a rough picture, it was easy to find. Thea took out Croydon's compass. This thing was simply a tool for searching for people and things. However, this was the first time she used it to find aliens. Thea was not very sure if it would work. Facts had proven the greatness of magic. This compass ignored the difference between Earth and other planets. It was indeed useful. After Thea inputted the target, the needle began to move slowly and powerfully. Sometimes it would fly past 5 degrees, and sometimes it would go back 1 or 2 degrees. Finally, the needle pointed firmly to the north. Your family is still on this planet, Thea reassured the Martian hunter. Then, the two of them started to search according to the coordinates. After flying for more than 30,000 miles, they arrived at a very ordinary wasteland. The needle conveyed a signal to Thea. They had arrived. This was the place. What's in here? Thea looked left and right but couldn't find any clues. The area under her feet was very ordinary. There were no craters or hematite. She really couldn't see anything unusual here. But magic power couldn't be faked, and the compass couldn't be wrong. There must be some mystery here that hadn't been discovered. Where was this place before? Thea asked. What kind of place is this? The Martian hunter looked at the wasteland and was also confused. He had been in those areas before, so he was still quite familiar with them. This place was already very remote. Fortunately, he loved his home very much. He directly activated his powerful psychic ability and dug out the image of that day from his memory. Then, like a computer modeling, he rearranged his memory on the surface of the planet and determined the location of the two of them. When the final information was confirmed, he couldn't help but let out a huh. Before Thea could ask, he explained, If I'm not wrong, this is, according to the language of Earth, this is the aristocratic area. The Megan family is aristocratic, and I'm a commoner. Aristocrats are born with powerful psychic abilities, and are the strongest in the entire race. Thea's expression was a little playful. Are you kidding me? If your aristocrats were stronger than you Martians would have unified the universe long ago. If it weren't for the fatal flaw of being afraid of fire, Thea, this new god, wouldn't dare to say that she could defeat the Martian hunter. It was because his racial talents were too strong. He was immune to physical and magical attacks, psychic control, infinite strength, and unparalleled regenerative abilities. Even if his head was cut off, another one would automatically grow out. He could fly and survive in the universe. There wasn't a need for too many people like this. 7 or 8 of them could defeat the Green Lantern Corps and the Little Blue Men. The Martian hunter had been holed up on Earth all this time. He didn't know how strong he was. Before she could instill the correct worldview in the old Martian hunter, Thea sized up the area again. Her psychic feelers began to dig deeper. When her psychic power reached 10,000 meters underground, it was bounced back by a powerful barrier. Thea was shocked this time. She felt something. Although it was a little vague, the rhythm couldn't be wrong. It seemed to be divine power that bounced back her psychic power. She seemed to have discovered something very strange. Did Martians have a god? When Thea told the Martian hunter about her discovery, he was a little uncertain. You mean to say that there has always been a god on our planet? It's not a figment of the imagination in those artistic works, but a real god with flesh and blood? I'm not sure what kind of life form it is, but there is no doubt that there is divine power below. Do you think it's surprising that there is a god? Hercules, who you've seen, is a god on Earth. Diana is also a god, and so am I. Thea felt that her acting was very good. She spoke calmly as if she was talking about something irrelevant, especially when coupled with her dazzling golden robe, which Thea named God's punishment, and her hood, which was more than half covered. She stood in the air with her hands behind her back. Whether it was her appearance or her rhythm, it was a strong visual impact. The mysterious aura contained in the silence was really suitable for the title of God. The Martian hunter felt that her words were a little strange, but he didn't think too much about the gods. We civilians can't come into contact with the gods. I always thought it was a kind of spiritual sustenance. I never knew that there was a god on Mars who had been watching us. Let's go down first. Your niece is probably down there. Such a big hidden danger had to be eliminated first. If this god jumped out when the other countries were to investigate later, it would be a big problem. The depth of 10,000 meters was not a problem for the two of them. The Martian hunter could enter the formless state, which was an ability that couldn't be explained by modern physics. Thea could even switch between reality and illusion. The two of them dived quickly. When they reached a layer of colorless and transparent barrier, they stopped in their tracks. Thea felt the divine power slightly. The other party was not a new god. There was no doubt about that. Judging from the waves of divine power, it should be stronger than Apollo and Hera. The Martians had a civilization of tens of thousands of years. Now that there were only two of them left, the probability of them believing in a god was very low. Chapter 570. If the probability of a god of belief was low, then the probability of the other party being a primordial god or a nature god was very high. These gods were all born from the world. For example, Zeus was a nature god. From a human's point of view, he was a playboy and was simply a scumbag. However, from his point of view, he was a part of nature. It was his nature to pursue beautiful things. How could he be forced to use human standards to ask of him? Nature gods were generally stronger than belief gods. Although Zeus was an old god, he could go against the Heavenly Father. This was very telling. Now, facing this unknown Martian god, she was a little worried. Thea's understanding of DC was only at the level of an ordinary person. She was definitely not very familiar with it. It was like she knew about Animal Man but did not know his name. This inexplicable Martian god in front of her made her a little flinch. She really did not know the details of this god. It would be troublesome if he was a god of space, time, and death. Just as she was wondering if she should go back and call some people to form a team to deal with this unknown entity next time, the Martian hunter could not wait to see his loved ones. He roared and used his powerful psionic power to force a hole in the divine barrier. The Martian hunter took the lead and rushed in. Thea could only run in helplessly. At the same time, she was thinking in her heart, if she could win, then she would fight. If she could not, then she would use the sonic boom to return to the new creation star. She was someone with a backer. Her Heavenly Father would not sit by and do nothing. Moreover, in this day and age, other than Batman, no one god could fight their way into the fourth world alone. If the other party was fierce and even the Heavenly Father was no match for him, then Thea could only accept her fate. However, the probability of this happening was very small. It was almost non-existent. This was the most pessimistic outcome. At this time, Thea was still very confident in herself. One or a few unknown Martian gods were still within her range of tolerance. Oh my god! I never knew there was such an area underground. The Martian hunter who rushed in first quickly stopped in his tracks. He seemed to be in disbelief. The buildings here were grotesque and variegated, and the style was like a ring. In the depths of this 10,000 meters underground, there was a miniature city, but now it was very dilapidated. Sia half-squatted and reached out her hand to brush between the stone pillars of an inverted tower. The material here was completely different from that on Earth, as if it was built by psychic power. The surrounding stone walls were engraved with words. Thea took out a light ring, switched to the language translation function, and read carefully. Malakadila, this was what the Martians called their planet. It meant the star of hope and the harbor of the soul. This miniature city was the aristocrat mentioned by the Martian hunter. It was built in secret to worship a god called Hramir. The description on the wall was very vague. It only vaguely mentioned the word art a few times. Could it be that the other party was a god of art? Thea felt that this was good news and immediately put her heart back into her stomach. The god of art, just from this name, she knew that it was not that powerful. Thea hadn't forgotten about the mission of finding the missing person. She took out the compass to confirm the location again. The two of them walked and stopped in the miniature city and finally arrived in front of a palace. A small figure was lying flat on the table made of mental power. Megan. Wake up, I'm your Uncle Ranjan. The Martian hunter was now so excited to see a member of her clan that she couldn't sleep for 3 days, let alone a relative. Although the scale of their family was a little big, Thea felt that the other party probably didn't remember that she had a civilian background. Uncle Ranjan? She seems to have entered a deep sleep. Do you need me to wake her up? Thea looked at the green-skinned little girl. She looked very young and had no injuries on her body. However, the other party had suppressed her mental power to an extremely deep level in her spiritual world. Some preliminary preparations needed to be done to wake her up. No, she used a high-level Martian mental skill. I have a better way to wake her up. Before the Martian hunter could finish her words, she was interrupted by a strange voice. It was strange because the voice didn't seem to be coming from a vocal organ. It was a bit like the sizzling sound of fire burning wood. The voice was coherent rhythmically, as if it was talking. The other party was using the Martian language, and the two of them could understand it. This collection can't be touched casually, huh? There's actually a living Martian? I just wanted to collect a Martian. Why did another one jump out? How troublesome. What accompanied the voice was scorching heat. The temperature in the air rose rapidly. Thea and the Martian hunter were sweating. The Martian hunter felt the shadow of the flame. He knew that he shouldn't retreat at this time, but his body was powerless to resist. He forced himself to stand, and sweat kept seeping out of his green skin. Thea was literally sweating. What the hell was this? Could this Martian be a fire god? This made her very depressed. The Martian hunter could relax and do whatever he wanted. This bastard. She looked in the direction of the voice unhappily. The other party didn't give her a feeling of invincibility. After becoming a god, she trusted her feelings more and more. She could tell at a glance if the other party was weaker than her. If the other party was stronger than her, but not stronger than the father, she would have a rough estimate. The guy in front of her who only talked and didn't show up, didn't give her any danger signals. His real combat power was hard to estimate. She thought that the other party was weaker than Zeus, the father, and the other gods. This made her sigh in relief. I'll go in and take a look. You stay here, Thea said. The Martian hunter tried to move forward several times, but his fear of fire made it difficult for him to move. Be careful. If you can't do it, retreat. Feeling that the other party was weaker than her, Thea's cautious attitude was reduced by half. Her confidence came back. Half of her face was covered by the hood, but her smooth jade-like chin had a hint of pride. Don't worry, I'm also a god. Leaving the Martian hunter behind to look after his niece, Thea walked in the direction of the voice. When she saw the Martian god in a pool of magma, she was happy. In the spacious and huge cave, they saw the god of Mars who was transmitting his voice from 1,000 miles away. The god of Mars was 100 meters tall. Compared to him, Thea was like an insect. The magma near the core of the planet was quite spacious, but to his huge body, it was like a small pond. Thea carefully looked at the Martian god opposite her. From his appearance, he didn't look like a Martian at all. She could barely make out a human figure with a head, a torso, and 4 limbs. Unlike Thea's divine body, half of his body was made of flames, and the rest of his body was made of hot rocks. Although Thea had never come into contact with an elemental god, her vision had long surpassed the level of mortals. This Martian god was not completely elementalized. The rocks in his body were proof. Chapter 571. If one could not have multiple roles like the Heavenly Father and Darkside, then the pursuit of purity was the only way out for the old gods. Sia, of course, cut off all excess energy, and Apollo, who only attacked with the energy of the sun, were proof of this. The Martian god tried to elementalize his body, but the rocks in his body exposed his shortcomings. At the very least, he was not pure. In a battle of the same level, this was equivalent to writing one's own weaknesses on one's forehead and telling one's opponent how to defeat him. From this, it could be deduced that the Martian god was not originally a fire-related god. He only became a fire-related god later on, and it was not very successful. You can't move freely, right? Can you only stay in this magma? How sad. Thea looked around and asked tentatively. The Martian god also sensed Thea's divine power, but the divine power of a new god was very different from that of an old god. The Martian god did not know where Thea came from, so he avoided answering the magma question. I am the god of fire, art, and death. Do not use your narrow vision to judge the supreme existence. You are qualified to be my subordinate, and I can teach you new knowledge. It is a treasure that you can only dream of. Sia scoffed at art and fire, but when she heard about death, she narrowed her eyes. It was because the power of death was too strong. Even Darkside could not resist death, let alone Sia. who was weak and frail. Death was everywhere. Whether it was mortals, gods, or the entire universe, there would be a day when the universe would come to an end. The eternal life of the gods was linked to the universe they were in. If the universe died, they would also die. Not only Thea but all gods were in awe of death. Many gods secretly studied what death was and how to avoid it. This was what all the good and evil gods did. The so-called death of Doomsday was the death that was bestowed by him. It was the death of all living beings, and it was a kind of crazy killing intent. The candles obtained from the top of Hades's head were the door between the dead and the living. It was the death between life and death. During the descent of the Rotten Kingdom, with her character of taking advantage of every opportunity and squeezing oil out of a stone, she naturally intercepted a portion of the harvest and helped the swamp monster and Miss Abby split their souls to create doppelgangers. No matter if it was the black decay or the green of all creation, she secretly intercepted a portion of them. The green of all creation was given to Poison Vine Lady for research, while the black of decay was personally tested by her. The black of decay also contained the power of death, but this kind of death was brought about through decay. It could only be said that it was an adjunct of decay. He also collected a lot of things that belonged to ordinary people, such as the fire-resistant bricks that had been used in crematoria for 30 years, the trees that many young men and women hung themselves from, and the weapons used by many serial killers. She had gathered a whole bunch of bits and pieces, but it was all to no avail. Perhaps it was because of his personality, or perhaps it was because of his deity position, but she couldn't find anything. Now that she heard that the big guy in front of her also had the deity position of death, she couldn't help but be cautious. Just like Hades, he had studied death for tens of thousands of years, but he didn't dare to say that he had understood it. If she guessed correctly, he was the Helimir of Malakadra, Mars, that was praised on the stone walls in the outside world, the god of flame, art, and death. Three alien gods that didn't really fit together claimed to have seen through the mystery of life and death. This made her cautious. You are the god of art that the Martians praise in the outside world, right? I can roughly think of the flame, but how did you obtain the deity position of death? Thea asked. The new gods fused with the origin and brought about the deity position, while the old gods comprehended from the big rules and obtained the deity position. There was an essential difference between the two, but part of the meaning could be used for reference. As if mentioning the other party's proud deeds, the Martian god named Helimir also wanted to share his experience with this strange god. His voice was still unpleasant like sawing wood. How to obtain the deity position of death? Of course, it was from a large number of deaths. Annihilation. I saw the end of all things from death. Only by personally ending them could I obtain this illusory power. Sia had a bad feeling. Who are they? Who are they? The Martians? That's right, that's what death told me. Only by cutting off all ties could I obtain the favor of death. I bestowed the curse of Helimir and spread it among the Martians through telepathy. Overnight they were all burned to death by the fire of their souls, haha. Gathering the power of everyone's souls, I opened the door of death. I obtained a new life. Thea's face was extremely ugly. You killed all the Martians. They were the people who worshipped you, the source of your faith. Helimir said contemptuously. They were all burdens. Only one's own power is eternal. Thea was completely speechless. She admitted that she wasn't a good person, but she wasn't evil to such an extent. Just for a possibility, he slaughtered the people who had worshipped him for thousands of years. This kind of guy didn't deserve to be a god. Thea was a little angry, especially when she thought that the Martian hunter outside had his family destroyed because of this guy. Her relationship with the Martian hunter was not as good as her relationship with Batman. This was mainly because the Martian hunter's fatherly love was too strong. All the young and beautiful girls were his daughters. Thea's age was neither too old nor too young. In order to avoid trouble, she always deliberately angered the Martian hunter. The two bickered many times. They didn't act like elders and they didn't act like peers. Slowly they got used to this way of getting along. Now that she knew that the person she respected very much, a person who deserved everyone's respect, a person who was thoroughly good, his whole life was affected by this monster in front of her, Thea was burning with anger. You deserve to die. You bastard, you don't deserve the title of God. Thea took out the sword of victory and pledge and roared loudly. The holy sword began to gather all kinds of colors with her anger. She wanted to seek justice for all the Martians who had died unjustly. Revenge for the unjustly dead. This was her justice. The hero mirror in front of her was completely evil. Thea's eyes were unprecedentedly firm. The holy sword in her hand drew a beautiful arc and slashed towards Hiromir. Idiot, you're waving your sword at a true god. Kneel down now and I'll forgive you. Hiromir was indeed unable to move. He could only condense a golden flame in the palm of his hand and deflect the attack of the holy sword from the side. Since the fight had already started, Thea wasn't going to talk to him at all. This huge cave was full of fire elements, and water element magic was completely ineffective. It was obviously unwise to use fire to attack him. Thea used the holy sword as a staff. She tapped the ground lightly and summoned a 100-meter-tall stone giant. She didn't know if it was an illusion, but she felt that this giant had the appearance of a Martian. In order to confirm her guess, she summoned another one. Chapter 572. The second summoned giant looked even more like a Martian. Thea felt that she had found a part of the truth. After commanding the two giants to attack Romir, Thea knelt down on one knee and touched the ground. At the same time, she used the emotions of pity to communicate. The earth first tried to communicate with her, and soon both sides reached a consensus. Thea stood up silently. The Martian hunters could be said to be dead, but it could also be said that they were still alive. The powerful spiritual power not only helped Romir to be reborn and obtain the death godhood, but when their power gathered together, it also replaced the original will of the planet. Romir had to die. This was the only request of the will of Malexandra, Mars. In order to achieve this, they interfered with the fusion of the fire element, causing Romir to be halfway through the fusion. He was afraid that they would do something to him, so he did not dare to enter the spiritual world to fuse with the fire element. 20 years ago, he had also hypnotized Megan Moss, all for the sake of protecting the last Martian. Don't listen to Hrommel's bragging. What collection? He couldn't even leave this cave. What kind of collection would he have? Now Thea's interference had given them a chance to take revenge. The stone giant summoned by her exploded with 300% of its strength. Even though it knew that it was no match for Romir, it still attacked Romir. Thea didn't drop the ball either. She began to accumulate the power of the holy sword, preparing to end the battle with a single strike. After all, this wasn't a game. It was impossible to know how much HP would be dealt in one strike and how much HP would be dealt in two strikes. When the HP bar was empty, the opponent would directly fall to the ground. This was very inconceivable in a battle between gods. The battle would only end if the opponent was dealt fatal damage in one strike. Otherwise, it would be like Thea's battle with Madelon on the new planet. Both sides fought for a long time, but neither side was injured. Using the holy sword to gather the will of the masses would require some effort on Earth. Now there was no need to gather on Mars. They had already gathered together, and they were very honest. As long as they could kill Romir, they could use their spiritual power as they wished. After centuries of erosion, there were at least tens of thousands of spirit bodies that still held strong hatred and had not been assimilated. These were the essence of the Martians. Even if they were not as good as the Martian hunters, they were still the best of the best. A conservative estimate was that from a spiritual point of view, one Martian was equivalent to 10,000 Earthlings. Just a single person's spirit energy was enough to materialize and affect the physical world from the mental world. Now that the hatred of the entire race was gathered together and unleashed 100-fold power through the sacred sword, the immense spirit energy caused even Thea's divine body to feel heavy. Not enough again. It was a perfect match for the holy sword to desire even more, and Thea also wanted to see just how much she could improve after ascending to godhood. She wanted even more. The planet's will was overjoyed. Previously, they had protected Megan Moss in order to allow the little girl to attain great success in her divine technique as soon as possible. Carrying their faith, they would be able to take revenge. Although the hope wasn't great, it was still hope. Now that Thea had jumped out to help, she actually felt that their power was not enough. This caused the planet's will to begin to transfer energy even more wildly. When all the power of a cheater race was gathered together, it was simply impossible to calculate with numbers. Scram. Ron Mill was not a fool. Seeing Thea preparing her ultimate move if he did not do anything, then he would have really lost his mind. He took out a long whip from the magma and wrapped it around the head of a stone giant, pulling it directly into the magma. The remaining stone giant was also blasted into smithereens by the golden flames he shot out. Unappreciative brat. After dealing with the two stone giants, Ron Mill raised his whip and fiercely lashed it at Thea. The tip of the whip carried a large amount of flames. The golden flames were like countless tiny dragons attached to the whip. Thea did not dare to take on the flames that seemed to have a very high temperature. She jumped up and dodged the whip. However, she made a mistake. The other party's whip technique was sloppy and ordinary, but the flames were unique. The bright silver flames left the whip and wrapped around Thea. Haha, did you see that? This is my living flame. You should be honored to die under this move. In order to avoid this unknown flame, Thea could only continue to fly upwards. However, the flame seemed to have a consciousness and followed her movements. Interesting. This flame was very pure, a bit like a mutation of the soul flame. This Ron Mill most likely added the Martian psionic ability to his divine domain of fire to obtain this strange flame. Thea tried several spells in a row, but the flame storm was directly neutralized by the living fire. The dungeon spell, which could withstand the impact of several tons of power, was also burned through. It had almost no hindrance. Carrying the holy sword that was getting heavier and heavier, her mobility was severely limited. She had no choice but to use the ring of lanterns to wrap the flame. Thea directly opened a portal and threw both the ring of lanterns and the living flame to a remote planet. She planned to study it carefully after the battle. Ron Mill, who was trapped in the magma and could not move, silently made up his mind when he saw that his long-range attacks were ineffective. He opened a portal in the void. The ink-like darkness shrouded the surroundings, as if the essence of death filled the underground cavern. Ron Mill withdrew his flame giant form and merged with the darkness. His voice was no longer burning like firewood. Instead, it sounded a little ethereal. Look, this is death. I don't care which god you are destined to fall here today. In the thick darkness there was only a little bit of light. That was the holy sword in Thea's hand. She looked around with interest. The same thing would have subtle differences in the eyes of different people, not to mention the invisible and intangible thing like death. Thea had never seen a god who dared to say that he had control over death. However, looking at it from different angles, she had some insights. Ron Mill seemed to have gained inspiration from the extermination of his race. The thick ink in front of her was his experience. Darkness is death. Thea felt that Ron Mill most likely understood it this way. And it was not only the darkness, he had also borrowed the Martian psionic ability and added countless dangers to the darkness. With the help of the Holy Sword's perception, Thea saw countless shadow beasts wandering in the darkness. She had never seen any of these beasts before, and they were all abstract and in all kinds of strange forms. These should be the enemies that the Martians had eliminated over a long period of time. Many of the beasts had the characteristics of spaceflight, which deepened her guess. Thea was now a little hesitant. Should she directly release the light born from the Holy Sword and break through this barrier, or deal with the shadow beasts for a while and accumulate more power for the Holy Sword? Chapter 573. At the crucial moment, someone made the decision for her. The Martian hunter walked out of the void. His face was filled with pain, and he looked at a certain spot in the darkness with hatred. Thea felt that it was where Romir was hiding. This guy released the dark barrier of death. It was definitely a bad move. He gave up on his torch-like appearance and unintentionally released the combat power of the Martian hunter. The Martian hunter's psionic ability had a very long range and a large range. It could connect from Earth to the moon. Moreover, the conversation between Thea and Romir was less than 800 meters away. He had heard the inside story of the night of the extermination of his race. After knowing the truth that led to the extermination of his family, he was filled with hatred and anger. His heart was filled with killing intent. However, the raging flames from before stopped him. He could only watch as Thea took revenge for his people. He couldn't move a single step. This filled him with frustration and helplessness. Just when he was anxious and didn't know what to do, he suddenly realized that the scorching heat in the air had disappeared. Without thinking, he flew in. I'm Rong and Rongzi, the son of my Rong and Saki. Today I will seek justice for all Martians." As the Martian hunter shouted, the entire planet seemed to respond to his call. The huge hole resonated with his voice. This vibration continued to the surface. On Earth, 50 million kilometers away from Mars, several reconnaissance satellites observed the drastic changes in the Martian magnetic field. Compared to Thea, Rongan was a proper Martian. However, he didn't have a weapon that could carry his psionic power. Many Martians who still retained their consciousness could only create some shadows to encourage him. It was truly spiritual encouragement. Father, Mother, Milia, Graham. Many shadows appeared around him. The Martian hunter, who was originally very idealistic and relied on his psionic power to conquer the world, received the encouragement from his people, and his psionic power increased by a large margin. He didn't have any divine power, nor did he know anything about the death godhood. However, relying on his psionic power, which was one of the best in the entire universe, he forcefully opened up a small area in the darkness. The light of the soul was resplendent and mysterious. It intersected with the radiance of Thea's holy sword, reflecting each other. "Ranjan Rongzi, I remember you. Your name means supreme light in the Malakadra language. When you were born, your light of the soul could envelop the entire planet." Pramir, who was hiding in the dark, said darkly. "Your people are too powerful. What the world needs are gods, not powerful mortals. All of you will eventually perish. I don't know how you managed to escape the calamity, but today you will definitely die here. Contribute your unique soul light to my authority of death." After leaving his flaming body, Romir seemed to have freed himself from the shackles of the lava. He could now move freely in space. Under his command, countless shadowy beasts attacked the two of them in a frenzy. Thea continued to maintain the Holy Sword's energy storage. She only maintained a defensive stance, leaving the attacking part to the Martian hunter. To be honest, this was the first time she had seen a Martian hunter fight at full strength. She felt that the Martians were a threat to her status as a god, so it made sense for her to wipe them out. The Martian hunter was too fierce. He had no divine power or divine position, but he added his soul power to his body, which was comparable to Superman's, and the energy that burst out was not inferior to that of the new god. In theory, the shadowy beasts, which were immune to abilities other than magic and divine power, were beaten by him until they cried out in pain. This was the overbearing aspect of soul power. If I feel that you will be injured, then you will be injured. If I feel that you will die with this punch, then the opponent will really die. Soul power was a very idealistic power. Thea could only say that she had grasped the surface of it. She was still far from being able to freely use it in battle like the Martian hunter. To a certain extent, the use of the light ring also placed great importance on soul power, but it did not need to be so profound. As the Martian hunter violently cleared the area, the originally countless shadowy beasts gradually became clear. Dealing with these small fries could not quell his anger. The revenge of the entire race was on his shoulders. He whispered to Thea and hurriedly rushed towards Romir. The other party did not know that he was afraid of fire. As long as he changed his form, the super Martian in front of him, who could compete with a super scion, would immediately shrink. Romir could only meet the aggressive Martian hunter head-on. Soon the two of them fought back and forth. Unable to use the flame whip or live fire, Romir was forced to retreat by the Martian hunter's psionic punches. Even if he hit his tracks, the Martians who had turned into the planet's consciousness would still point out his location. He was now in a dilemma. The Martian hunter was simply unforgiving. The 100-meter-tall Romir was beaten back by him, and even one of his arms was cut off by the Martian hunter's soul blade. Even though it quickly grew back, this god still felt humiliated. "Uncle and Roan, go away." The light energy Thea had accumulated this time was 3 times more than when she fought against Doomsday. It seemed that the amount was not much, but in fact it was because every time it carried an additional portion of power, the weight of the Holy Sword would increase. The accumulation of power was not additive, but multiplicative. Thea did not know how many Martians she had gathered. She was just very confident that the other party would not be able to block or dodge this sword. The powerful convergence of power seemed to have a trace of karma. The other party regarded mortals as ants. Today's result was destined because of the past. Gods were indeed great, but mortals could not be ignored. For all the Martians, Thea held the holy sword and flew up. The two of them approached each other rapidly. The light on the holy sword reflected Romir's desperate face. He could not block it in time. The rules of the world restricted his space of movement. He could only watch as the holy sword stabbed into his left eye. The bright light shone into the world. The cave that was previously filled with thick black ink was flooded by the light. The 100-meter-tall Romir fell to the ground. The holy sword gathered the light of the souls of all the Martians. Not only did it disperse the darkness in the cave, but it also broke Romir's death divine domain. Romir, who was originally the god of art, was obsessed with obtaining the death divine domain. Ironically, he could not use this power at all. He could only drink poison to quench his thirst and use the flame divine domain to suppress the death divine domain. Now that the death divine domain was directly broken, the balance in his body could no longer be maintained. His whole body was like a torch burning fiercely. The divine domain began to backfire. His life was about to come to an end. Regardless of whether he was self-combusting or not, Romir, who had turned into a big candle, caused a serious disturbance to the Martian hunter. It was a pity that he could no longer see this scene. The Martian hunter, who was previously majestic and could reach the sky and catch turtles in the sea, instantly withered when he saw the torch. He was only holding on because he was still thinking about the blood of countless people. "My son, you must be strong. Rong-en, my husband, we will always be with you. Father, you must promise Graham that you will live on well." Thea saw 3 big and 1 small Martians surrounding Rong-en. Their voices were like a breeze blowing past. The Martian hunter's face changed from pain to sorrow. The light of the holy sword was still working. The entire underground cave was filled with the light of the souls of the Martians. This also caused more and more Martians to walk out. Chapter 574. Among them were Rong-en's neighbors, his relatives, and even a few people who were his enemies. Some encouraged, some provoked, and some cursed. They were using different methods to help Rong-en get back on his feet. Uncle Rong-en. The one who walked in front of him was the little girl who had been lying on the stone steps. She was the only surviving Martian other than the Martian hunter, Megan Moss. The little girl also had a strong psychic ability. She communicated with many wills and quickly understood the situation. She walked to the side of Rong-en, who was half kneeling on the ground, and gently placed her palm on his back, silently giving him her support. "Uncle Rong-en, that guy is dying. You can give him the final blow." Thea also appeared at the right time. Rong-en was a few hundred years old. He did not need the encouragement of a 20-year-old to be able to strengthen his confidence. Superman was able to overcome the influence of kryptonite and kill Doomsday. Did he rely on his physical strength? No, he relied on his tenacious willpower. Thea felt that the Martian hunter should also have such willpower. After taking this step, his fear of fire would also be reduced by more than half. The Martian hunter finally stood up shakily under everyone's expectant gaze and walked forward shakily. Whether it was Thea, Megan, or even his family, they were all secretly cheering him on. He walked a short distance of 100 meters for 5 minutes. As he got closer and closer to Ron Mill, his confidence slowly recovered. "I can do it. I won't be afraid of fire anymore. I can't let Cam down." The Martian hunter roared out his daughter's name and started to stagger forward. The soul ability that would automatically extinguish upon seeing flames once again lit up in his heart. It was very weak, as if it could be extinguished with a single breath. However, the hope of his family overcame the defects in his body. His soul ability was repairing his body with an incredible ability. The Martian hunter felt very strange at this time. His idealistic psychic ability gave him an intuition that maybe he was not so afraid of fire anymore. As one of the top hypnotists in the entire universe, the Martian hunter did not know if he was hypnotizing himself or if he was really not afraid of fire anymore. He did not want to think too much about it. He wanted to kill his enemy first. "Ramar of Malaikadra, your end is here." By the time he reached Ramar's head, even though he was still a little dispirited, he had recovered 30% of his psionic force. It was no problem for him to deal with a guy who couldn't even retaliate. At this moment, Ramar had already lost half of his body, and the divine power was still devouring him without hesitation. One of his eyes was blinded by the holy sword, and he struggled to open his remaining eye. "Ranjan Rongzi, you can't kill me. I'm your god. I was the one who protected all of you before your abilities blossomed. It was me. Thea despised the way this guy begged for mercy, but she believed that the Martian hunter would not be fooled. As expected, the Martian hunter acted as if he did not hear anything. He started to recite names in a low voice. Every time he finished reciting a line, he would stab Romer with the spirit blade. His divinity was shattered, and without the support of the divinity, Romer's realm dropped rapidly. Half of his body was burned by the divine power, and he was now just an ordinary being with strong vitality. Facing the Martian hunter, the strongest Martian, without the protection of the divinity and losing half of his body, Romer could only beg bitterly. As the Martian hunter mechanically recited names and stabbed him, no matter how strong his vitality was, he could not withstand such consumption. Meron Rongzi, Saki Rongzi, Milia Rongzi, Gram Rongzi. I've taken revenge for all of you. The Martian hunter unleashed all of his power, and a sharp blade of light pierced through Romer's head. This god who had tried to get his hands on the divinity of death and destroyed all of the Martians had ended his long life. The Martian hunter, who had exhausted all of his strength, lay on the ground. Carefree, reminiscing relief, regret, and all kinds of thoughts gathered in his heart. He had lost his goal and just wanted to lie down quietly for a while. Sia was a little depressed. Come on, we were originally here to look for the mineral deposit, okay? Looking for the mineral deposit turned into looking for the person, then looking for the truth, exposing the real culprit, and finally getting our revenge. This messy situation could only be described as strange. Uncle, don't lie down. Your relatives. Thea kept him in suspense, and the Martian hunter took the bait and immediately got up. He knew that she would not speak without thinking, and there must be a reason for bringing up this topic. He asked in disbelief, "You can revive them?" "I can't. The rules of life and death are too big." Thea thought to herself, perhaps she could try it when she mastered the equation of life, but there was no need for that now. She continued, "There's a place on Earth called Nanderbat. I once found a city left behind by the ancient Earth civilization in the deepest part of it. It was a city formed by spiritual power." If the Martian hunter still did not understand, he would have lived for hundreds of years in vain. You mean that my wife and children can continue living there?" Thea nodded. Then, she communicated with him through the spiritual channel. "That world is very small. I estimate that it can only hold a few dozen people. After all, your people's spiritual power is too strong, and it's a huge burden on that small world." Yes, Thea meant to take away a few people who could be related to her. As for the rest, they would slowly assimilate. They could slowly assimilate with the planet. He had helped them take revenge, and they could rest in peace. As for the selection criteria, of course, it was to know people first. Who cared about Martian nobles? "I don't even know you." Thea used the remaining divine power in the air to set up a large-scale time barrier. The time flow was 51, and the spiritual bodies immediately became sluggish. After all, she was using Romer's scattered divine power, so she did not feel the pinch. The motivation of the Martian hunter was instantly aroused. He was not a selfless person. He first removed his parents, wife, and daughter from the list. Megan was a little surprised when she heard about this. She also picked out her parents, the two siblings. The more than 300 relatives of the same generation could only say sorry. The two of them picked out 20 people. Thea directly teleported to Nanderbat. She was familiar with them now. She immediately turned into a heroic spirit and brought everyone into the spiritual space. It was worth mentioning that the Martian hunter and his niece could enter the formless state. They could squeeze into the spiritual space. The people in the space were still the same. However, Thea had left behind many spiritual animals for them, which made the space livelier. The work of settling the new residents was completed smoothly. Chapter 575. Everyone chatted in the mental space for a long time. The Martian hunter, who was reunited with his wife and daughter, was grinning from ear to ear. Thea looked at the time and left the world with the two living people. After becoming a new god, her power was too strong. She was so strong that the space around her became unstable. In addition, the strength of the Martian hunter uncle and nephew was also not bad. The space was also heavily burdened. The three of them directly returned to the outside world. These people who had been dead for hundreds of years could be settled, but Megan Moss was a living person. The way Martians gave birth was very strange. Even though the race had been extinct for so many years, she was only 40 years old. According to the Martians, she was still a child. The fatherly love of the Martian hunter was brought out again. He reprimanded the Martian girl who wanted to explore the universe and asked her to settle down on Earth first before thinking about exploring the universe. Thea asked him to go back and deal with the naughty child first. She went back to touch Romer's body. In fact, she thought that the whip was not bad. It was suitable for a 100-meter-tall giant like him, but it was too long for Thea. She planned to go back and ask Diana to refine it. In addition, she also carefully packed up Romer's special ability, living fire. This unique flame needed to be slowly studied. She then spent 3 days exploring all the mineral resources on Mars and had a simple communication with the will of the planet. This place was already barren, so there was no problem of destroying the environment. After settling the problem of mining resources on Earth, she returned to the metropolis. Through several different channels, she met with the actual rulers of several countries. The problem of resources was a big problem that anyone with a normal IQ could see. Thea not only gave them the results of the Mars survey, but also a simple design of a single mech. Want to become stronger? Come. Mining resources is your only way out, and interstellar mining is a problem that can't be avoided no matter what. The countries were pulled into the war chariot by her, and began the preparatory work. The rocket launch centers of several countries were in full swing. All the talents in aerospace technology were recruited by the government. Thea didn't let them close the door and think about it. She provided several upgraded versions of existing technology for them to refer to. Rockets, airships, spaceships, and giant satellites similar to the Batman Watchtower space base. Several major countries unanimously chose the plan of changing aircraft carriers into space carriers. This was the inspiration that Thea got from Marvel's S.H.I.E.L.D. mothership next door. Now her enhanced version can not only fly, but also travel short distances in space. Of course, it was a short journey for her, but for the people of Earth, this was simply an epic-making invention. In order to integrate alien technology with human science, many human scientists began to research without sleep or food. Thea could not help much in this. She was a real scientist, but there were too many disciplines in modern society and the division of labor was too detailed. At most, she could give some suggestions. She did not know much about the details, and the specific implementation would have to be studied and mastered by the people on Earth. Otherwise, it would be a tragedy if the mothership fell halfway. After hanging out with the scientists for less than a month, she had to leave the laboratory because Diana had returned. "You've become beautiful." This was the first sentence that the long-legged goddess said when they met. This made Thea very happy. Her attributes were now very magical. Strength and dexterity were the weakest, and intelligence and perception could only be said to be good. Charm, which she had never paid much attention to, was the highest. Perhaps this was the ability of wealth? In the eyes of different people, she would show different beauty. No matter what gender or race the other person was, even a silicon-based creature would think that she was beautiful when they saw her. Even if the two aesthetic standards were worlds apart, they would still think that she was very beautiful. "Have you found your source?" Thea carefully looked at Diana. Her aura was not the same as before, but it was also different from her own. It did not look like she had fused with her source. "Source?" Diana asked. Thea suddenly realized that she didn't tell her about these things because she was afraid that it would affect her choice. Now that she didn't have these scruples, she told her about the whole process of her ascension, and also mentioned the Heavenly Father and a lot of people. "Well, I don't think it's fusion. If you want to name it, I think it's more like cultivation." The long-legged goddess thought about it very seriously and said carefully. Diana's concepts were very vague, so she could only answer Thea's questions. The two of them studied for a long time and finally figured out the basic context. Unlike Thea's source, which was directly plucked and matured, Diana's source was too young and needed to be patiently cultivated, or it could be called a symbiosis between the two. Unlike the original time when she obtained the war priesthood of Ares, Diana was already on the road to becoming a new god. Her source was called Guardian. From the name, one could tell that it was a source with fighting ability, which was fundamentally different from Thea. However, that was all in the future. The gap between a new source and an adult source was huge. For the first time in 100 years, Thea suppressed Diana in all aspects, so she was very happy. Using the excuse that clothes obstructed the communication between the source, the goddess of wealth happily dragged the guardian goddess to bed. Golden hair and black hair were entangled together, and two pairs of smooth and long legs were entangled with each other. The battle between the heavenly thunder and the earthly fire ended with the goddess of wealth's complete victory. The two of them were intimate for half a month before they finally remembered that they still had business to do. Diana needed to gradually understand the meaning of guardian. Thea's advice was to start with some simple things such as guardian of love or guardian of family, and eventually expand to the whole world. You still need me to protect you? The Valkyrie had been defeated in the past few days, and was very proud to express her dissatisfaction. It was rare to see such an expression on her face. Thea's body felt light for a few days, but she did not relax. Temporarily leading did not mean that she would lead forever. Diana was immersed in catching up, so she had to continue to maintain her advantage. However, she still prepared a surprise for Diana. The two of them came to the eastern Mediterranean. Thea had returned Paradise Island to its original position. She used her official position for personal gain to absorb power from the new creator star's magic net. Now, the people using her magic net were no longer limited to the magic army, but the whole new Protoss race benefited from it. There were tens of millions of spellcasters, so the amount of magic power gathered on the magic net every day was immeasurable. She just took out a little bit and rearranged the enchantment of Paradise Island. Seeing that Paradise Island, which she had lived on for 1,000 years, had returned to the human world, Diana was excited and moved. She was even more certain of her mission. She wanted to stay here for a while and think about her future. Thea took out Hramir's whip and gave it to her to modify. Paradise Island had all kinds of forging equipment, so it was only a matter of modifying a whip. Diana hammered the whip, which was hundreds of meters long, until it was only 3 meters long. The function of storing fire inside was still intact. However, Thea could not use the living fire that was refined by the light of the soul. She could only use magic power to replace it. Based on the characteristics of the living fire, she named the pure and untainted magic power Silver Fire. Thea stayed with her for half a month before she was chased away by Diana. The two of them were the only ones left on the deserted island. The two of them had sex every day, which made Diana feel dizzy and exhausted. Although they were still very happy mentally and physically, and they even had more divinity than ordinary people, they were actually quite happy in all aspects. However, if they continued to play like this, they would not be able to discover anything serious even after 1,000 years. The two of them needed to continue moving forward. Thea's divine seat needed to be further excavated, while Diana's origin law needed to be developed slowly. They did not have much time to waste. Chapter 576. Shortly after leaving Paradise Island and returning to the city, Thea was summoned back to Star City by Moira. She saw her mother mysteriously dismiss the secretary and closed the door. She didn't know what had happened. Oliver has a son. Moira's words were shocking. The moment she opened her mouth, it was big news. The first thought that came to Thea's mind was that Shadow had a child. The second thought was even weirder. Did he get back together with Laurel and give Tommy a forgiveness hat? In less than a second, she knew that she had been wandering around Paradise Island for the past few days. Her mind was too active and she was 100% sure that she was wrong. When she passed by the Green Arrow base just now, she didn't see any signs of pregnancy. What Moira was talking about was definitely not the current situation. Moira didn't let her think too much and handed over a photo. In the photo was a little boy of 7 or 8 years old. He was thin and small with a few freckles on his face. This child is 8 years old. His name is William. I gave his mother a sum of money to send them away. Do you think we should accept this child? Moira's words were vague, but Thea understood her subtext. At that time, the Quinn family was a rich family. In order to prevent unrelated outsiders from sharing the property, and Oliver was indeed a bastard at that time who fooled around and had a child, Moira, as a mother, sent them away. It was not wrong. However, now that the election was imminent, Moira was a little uncertain whether this incident would cause a domino effect. Thea didn't speak. She looked at the photo first. His eyes and chin were a little like Oliver's, but other aspects were not obvious. She felt that Moira was a little confused because she cared too much. A child like this was actually separated from Moira by a layer so it wouldn't cause a direct impact. She had a little impression of this child named William. He should be the child that Oliver had before he went to sea. At that time it was still Thea 1.0 era. She remembered that this unlucky child was repeatedly captured by bad guys in the American TV series. Oliver said that he hid the child in a place that he didn't know. However, the bad guys' secondary professions were all detectives. Every bad guy could capture his son and threaten him. It was a pain in the ass. Now there were only two options: to maintain the status quo or to protect him. Let's maintain the status quo. I'll send someone to protect you, Thea said with clear eyes. She could only take precautions in advance. This was Oliver's flesh and blood. There were many methods that could not be used. What about Oliver? Don't tell him, Thea said straightforwardly. It wasn't that she had any bad intentions, but she had a divine premonition that if this child named William didn't get involved in Oliver's life, his future would be very happy. Not everyone wanted to be a superhero or the son of a superhero. This could be seen from Professor Alec Holland and Miss Abby, who both lived in seclusion, not to mention Damien, who was still training hard after returning to Gotham. Not everyone had an iron will. Superheroes were definitely not the first choice of ordinary people. William had lived for 8 years without any illness or disaster. Thea could guarantee that once the Quinn family recognized this child, his originally peaceful life would fall into an unknown abyss. There was a complicated cause and effect relationship. Thea was not prepared to talk about those mysterious things with Moira. As an outstanding politician, Moira also did not want to recognize this child. However, she could not consider the cause and effect relationship. She could only consider it from the perspective of herself, politics, and family. Now that she heard Thea's words, she was secretly relieved. Little William, who was living in a small town thousands of miles away from Star City, did not know that his future was decided by a few words from his evil grandmother and aunt goddess. He was still enjoying his childhood peacefully. Thea left Moira's mayor's office and made some arrangements. The child's various birth certificates were disguised. The child's mother was also promoted slightly through indirect relationships. She did not have to worry about food and clothing and had a stable income. This was considered a good ending. She originally wanted to set up 2 security guards, but after thinking about it, she gave up. How could one guard against a thief for 1,000 days? Setting up security guards would only raise suspicions. Apart from this child, Thea did not do any more concealment measures. As a presidential candidate, as long as Moira did not have any major problems, she would be fine. Even if there were political enemies who tore a hole in Oliver's body, it would do little harm to Moira. The most important thing was that Oliver's previous private life was too unrestrained. There were at least 800 women who had dated him. With such a large base, as long as someone wanted to find them, they would definitely be able to find them. No matter how powerful Thea's eye of obliteration was, it could not kill more than 800 people. She could not hide it at all. If Oliver were to run for president himself, then there would definitely be more than a dozen children with different skin colors jumping out in public to call him father. Now that they were separated by a layer, the impact on Moira was very small. The United States was deeply influenced by the United Kingdom, and the requirements for leaders were slightly more serious. In Europe, it was common to see a young president with an old wife, and which lover the president had dinner with. The private life of the president was not a big deal, let alone the private life of the children. Even if there was a problem with a little public relations and control the direction of public opinion, maybe this could be regarded as an example of being close to the people. Putting Oliver in front as a target, this was the tacit understanding between the mother and daughter. Anyway, he was thick-skinned and did not care about these trivial things. The intense general election had begun at a certain level, and several candidates had begun their activities. The president who was in office benefited from the destruction caused by the Black Decay. He had the lowest public support rate in history. He was attacked by rotten eggs when he went out, and shoes were thrown at him when he gave a speech. It was said that he was looking at the calendar to count the days. He did not want to stay in this broken White House for one more day. But as the saying goes, the tree wants to be quiet, but the wind will not stop. He wanted to honestly wait until he left office, but someone did not want to follow his wishes. The central city, which had always been stable, was still in trouble. The enthusiasm of the military for the conversion of the aircraft carrier into a flying carrier was simply indescribable. Thea now had a month. 10 days were spent in the new creation star, 10 days dealing with various affairs and occasionally communicating with Diana, and the remaining 10 days were basically spent in the secret experimental base of the Pentagon. Thea, Barry Allen is awake. At noon that day, the young lady had just left the Pentagon when she received secret information from Caitlin Snow, who was actually the Frost Killer, who usually pretended to be a naive and sweet girl. The Flash was about to appear, and the peaceful days of the Central City were coming to an end. She just needed to tell the Frost Killer to maintain the original rhythm and pass on the information. There were more and more superheroes in this world, and with it the outbreak of villains began to appear like a blowout. There was a very mysterious causal relationship in between. It was biased to say that there was no disease without a cure, but at a macro level there was still some truth. Chapter 577. It was as if a valve had been opened. On the day the Flash woke up, the bank in Central City was robbed by a paranormal who could control the weather. The police could not do anything about it. Witnesses from all walks of life expressed their opinions on social media and criticized the government's inaction. Thea deeply despised the behavior of robbing a bank just because they had some ability. It was too scary to be ignorant. How much money could they have robbed? One day later, on the way home from work, Thea felt that something was amiss. Her secretary, Miss Maisie, quickly put up her guard. Miss Maisie might look delicate, wearing high heels and a one-step skirt every day, and even walking like a cat. She looked like she was ready for the unspoken rules, but she was actually not any weaker than Death Knell. "Oh, don't worry. It's not a bad guy. He should be looking for me. You can go back first." Thea looked into the distance and flew to a nearby building. Miss Maisie was relieved. Thea and Luther had something in common. They didn't need her protection. Miss Maisie trained so well to protect herself so that she wouldn't die in the aftermath of a chaotic battle. Now that she heard from Thea that it was nothing serious, she calmly went to the garage to get her car. Thea flew to the rooftop and waited for 2 seconds. A yellow lightning flashed and a young man walked in front of her. "Barry, long time no see. You seem to have recovered well. Why are you looking for me?" Thea asked the young Flash in front of her. Shouldn't this guy be looking for Oliver? Why did he come to her? In fact, Barry was a little helpless. The few superheroes on the surface now were Superman, Batman, and Thea. The first two were elusive. He couldn't find them at all. Most importantly, he didn't have that kind of friendship. He also went to Green Arrow's side, but what he saw was Oliver having sex with Shadow. Should I call a certain someone out to listen to my complaints while I'm in high spirits? This wasn't something a normal person would do. He had no choice but to come to the metropolis from Star City. He wanted to hear the opinions of this famous female superhero. "I spent my whole life looking for miracles. I didn't expect to become a miracle. I wanted to help others, but unfortunately, I messed up today. What if Professor Wells is right? What if I'm not a hero? What if I'm just someone who happened to be struck by lightning?" Barry seems to have been holding back for a long time. He starts from the time when Panga created the world, no, from his birth. Thea wants to remind him that they have discussed this issue before. Theoretically, she knows some of the things that happened. However, seeing that Barry doesn't seem to be happy, she decides to listen to him. In summary, Barry Aaron, this child, had not found his own position. With superpowers, he felt that he should be the savior of the world and should bear all the responsibilities. He was on the opposite end of the spectrum from those who had the ability to do whatever they wanted. Thea had forgotten how Oliver had enlightened her in the original space-time, but she had her own methods. She stretched out her hand and cast a water mirror spell. The water ripples and soon the image of an old man appeared. Thea knew that Barry didn't recognize him, so she started to tell him, "Dr. Savannah, he has been looking for miracles his whole life. Half a year ago, he finally received the favor of fate and obtained extraordinary powers. He thanked the heavens for their blessings and donated 1/3 of his family fortune. He also helps the poor from time to time. Now, he is still donating books and precious ancient books to various universities. He's already 60 years old, but he's still using light and heat." Thea felt a little guilty when she said this. Dr. Savannah was a proper villain in the original space-time. Now that he had obtained 20% of Black Adam's divine power, In order to make a good impression on Thea, not only did he donate his family fortune, but he also built bridges and paved roads, planted trees, helped the poor and helped the poor. He did a lot of good deeds. Thea didn't treat him unfairly. Naturally, she didn't give him the dummy version of the new creator's planet. Instead, she gave him a copy of the teaching notes that she used to teach Damien. If he had any questions, he could teach her remotely or leave a message. Seeing that Barry was deep in thought, she gave another example. This time the image changed, and a little boy with green skin appeared. This boy's name is Carl Logan. His code name is Beast Boy. Due to an accident in the laboratory, he underwent a genetic mutation and can switch between animals. He's only 9 years old now. This is the image of him saving a traffic victim yesterday. In the image, Beast Boy turned into a pony, and in an instant, he pushed the victim from the front of the car that failed to brake to the other side of the road. Thea covered her face a little. It was hard to tell which was more painful, being hit by a car or being pushed by a pony. Barry, who saw this scene, was also a little embarrassed. This child was much fiercer than him. Thea coughed a little. Look, no matter if it's a 60-year-old man or a 9-year-old child, even if they do it clumsily, they are still doing it. It's better than not doing it at all. Everyone needs to grow, and heroes naturally need to grow as well. If they can't do it today, they can do it tomorrow. Heroes don't grow in a day, right? Do what you should do. It's not that lightning happened to hit you, it's that it chose you. Thea looked at the son of the god of speed, and said with a solemn and respectful tone. After laying out the facts and reasoning, Barry Allen regained his vigor and returned to Central City while singing The First Battle of the Flash. Thea stood there and thought for a while. It was better to go and observe. Compared to intelligence and charm, Thea wasn't good at speed. However, she had upgraded from a normal person's model to a Lord's model. No matter how slow she was, she could still be faster than the rookie Flash. How could she run back like a wild donkey? Thea pursed her lips. She could still compete with him in speed in the future, but she wasn't in the mood now. She identified the direction and directly teleported to Central City. She put on an invisibility spell and entered the cutting-edge technology laboratory. Other than Caitlin, who noticed her visit, Psyker and Reverse Lightning didn't notice her at all. Thea waited in silence. What happened next was like watching a movie. The Flash ran back and showed Psyker his high-tech wear-resistant suit as if he was presenting a treasure. After that, the monster that controlled the weather also jumped out at the right time. The Flash's first battle wasn't good, and Reverse Lightning used his max-level mouth to start feeding him chicken soup. What left the deepest impression on Thea was his heart-wrenching scream. Run, Barry, run, run. She didn't watch the old man's emotional performance anymore. She rushed to the scene and prepared to observe the god of speed. At this time the monster was still clamoring, and even shouted that he was God. Thea almost fainted. The ignorant were really fearless. After holding back for so long, it was just a small tornado. Did he think he was God? She looked at the Flash, who was moving in the opposite direction of the tornado. To be precise, she was looking at the god of speed. With just a glance, she knew that she guessed right. This was also the origin. It symbolized the concept of speed. It was the origin of speed. However, compared to the black of decay and the green of all things, the god of speed was more elusive. In Thea's opinion, Barry was very similar to the swamp monster from before. He was just a worker. If he didn't change the nature of his life force, he would end up lying dead in the god of speed space. There was a rumor that the universe produced the god of speed at the moment when the lightning struck Barry Allen. At that moment, this power extended to 2 levels, covering the entire timeline and the parallel universe. Unfortunately, Thea couldn't see that Barry was different. Thea cast a few wind-type acceleration spells, trying to see if they could help the rookie Flash speed up, but unfortunately, they were all immune to the Flash's power. She tried to intercept a part of it, but this time it disappeared into the air. Chapter 578. After trying several methods in a row, Thea could only give up. In the state of invisibility, more methods were not easy to use. She still had a lot of time, so she could slowly study it later. Unaware that there was someone spying on them, the soldiers were quickly killed by the Flash, who went berserk. Successfully obtaining the first experience of a hero, the fledgling Barry Allen ran back to the cutting-edge technology laboratory to celebrate with a few friends. The research on the power of speed came to an end, and the young lady naturally returned to her home. She had too many things to do, and the anti-lightning that was destined to die in this world was not worthy of her attention. In the next few days, the deeds of the Flash began to ferment, and various media reports began to talk about this lightning-like figure. There was no doubt that this was a superhero. Many rescued citizens could testify to this, but no one knew whether the hero was a man or a woman, old or young, or even an earthling or an alien. In just half a month she defeated a superpower that could split and a superpower that could release poisonous gas. The comments on the internet began to show an explosive trend. What happened to our world? Would ordinary people still have a way to live in the future? This was not only the question of ordinary people, but also of several people who were in charge of the country's lifeline. Thea's evaluation of them was that they were a bunch of muddle-headed idiots. All questions about the Flash said that they did not know, which indirectly increased the worries of several people. They must immediately enter the interstellar era, and the technological level of the Earth made them feel very insecure. Do you know this person? In the place that Thea named the Hall of Justice, Batman asked and took out a few photos for her to see. It was amazing. Batman's black technology took a picture of Barry Allen's face, even though he was wearing an anti-wear suit and a mask. The Flash in the photo was rescuing a woman trapped in the house by a fire. He was running up the wall from the bottom. His technique was not very skilled and his speed was a little slow. This gap was captured by Batman. After the image comparison, face recognition, face restoration, and dug out Barry's appearance. Well, I do know him. Barry Allen, a very kind person. He is a rare good person. Thea answered with certainty. Why can he run so fast? Is it a mutation? Batman asked. According to him, he was struck by lightning and became like this after that. Thea spread her hands. She knew Batman very well among the superheroes. This guy would definitely find a small notebook to write it down and think hard about how to deal with it. Catwoman said that he only slept for an hour a day, and used all his energy to think about other people. However, Thea was still looking forward to his research. One had to know that the Fenrir Armor's high-speed aiming device would be able to hit the Pinnacle Flash in the future. She wondered how high the high-speed aiming device would be. She could only submit to this kind of unreasonable black technology. If this yellow lightning is a friend, then who is this red lightning? Batman threw out another stack of photos. There were photos of Gotham, Metropolis, Star City, Seaside City, and many other big cities. The only similarity was that there was a red lightning bolt in each photo. Defying lightning? Thea's face was expressionless, but countless thoughts were colliding in her mind. There were many theories about the origin of the power of lightning speed. Even those who were extremely fast could not figure out the source of their power, let alone an outsider like her. However, from defying lightning's painstaking efforts to cultivate the Flash for 14 years, some conclusions could be inferred. In short, if there was a Flash, there would be a power of lightning speed. Defying lightning came to this world. Because there was no Flash, his power of lightning speed disappeared directly. He could only cultivate Barry Allen himself. In theory, when the lightning bolt hit Barry Allen 9 months ago, the power of lightning speed had already been unlocked in this world. Defying lightning's own power of lightning speed should have recovered a lot. However, he had been silent for 9 months and only came out now. Did this mean that his power of lightning speed was not enough before? Only when Barry was running for his life could he have enough power of lightning speed to squander. She was not an extremely fast person, so she could not understand the cause and effect of this. Thea only knew that defying lightning was now a little anxious. This world was too different from what he knew. He had to look around to confirm the next step of his plan. I'll take care of him. Thea took the photo of red lightning and said goodbye to Batman, then left the metropolis. That night, Thea flew high in the sky, looked down at the earth and waited quietly. After waiting until the middle of the night, a red lightning bolt suddenly appeared at the end of her line of sight. The other party kept moving through the streets and alleys, stopping from time to search for something. Thea's supervision could see that defying lightning's face was getting more and more confused. This transmigrator from the 25th century was definitely not in a good mood at this time. When others were unhappy, Thea would generally be very happy. Seeing that defying lightning left Seaside City and was speeding on the highway, she was very unethical and pulled a magic rope on the side of the road. The rope was invisible and colorless, blending into the surrounding environment. In order to test the magic resistance of the power of lightning speed, she added a few triggering spells on the rope. She had just finished setting it up when the red lightning bolt was in front of her in the blink of an eye. The magic rope was suddenly broken by a huge force, and defying lightning speed was also interrupted. He rolled on the ground like a gourd, rolling 17 or 18 times on the ground. What the hell? Defying lightning looked around, a little confused. He dared to swear to God that he did not see anything just now. Thea was also very happy. These extremely fast people were protected by the power of lightning speed, which was very anti-physical and ignored the rules of inertia and acceleration. Otherwise, they would have fallen to their deaths at such a high speed. In any case, she still remembered her mission, which was to teach Defying Lightning a lesson and make him obediently stay in Central City and play with little lightning slowly. Why the hell was he running around in the middle of the night instead of sleeping? She was wearing her divine artifact robe without a hood. She revealed herself in the air and asked in an indifferent tone, "Who are you? What are you looking for?" "Thea Quinn." Defying Lightning's eyes narrowed. He did not sleep in the middle of the night, so naturally he was not out running. It was just that the current world was too different from the world he remembered. He had some guesses in his heart, but he did not give up and was still looking for evidence to comfort himself. In his original world, there was no Superman or Batman. A few months ago, the darkness of decay scared him. At that time, his power of lightning speed had just recovered, and ordinary mosquitoes certainly could not bite him. But if the whole world was full of mosquitoes, then he could only wait for death. To be honest, he was a little scared at that time. He went to the scene in Wyoming earlier than Thea and the others, and the scene at that time could only be described as shocking. Chapter 579. Fortunately, the descent of the Rotten Kingdom was quelled by the superheroes soon after, and he was relieved. Now that Barry Allen had officially returned to his position, he would shout, "Run, run, run." Every day he would shout, "Run, run, run," in the name of training the new Flash. Barry was running at full speed, and his lightning speed was recovering rapidly, which was why he had been investigating for the past few days. He had tried to observe Superman and Batman in secret, but he couldn't find either of them. Thea was his next target, but he didn't expect her to come to him so openly. His eyes narrowed, and he turned into red lightning and rushed forward. Looking at the red lightning in front of her, Thea increased her speed and chose to dodge. The two quickly chased each other in the wilderness. Reverse lightning was indeed gritting his teeth as he ran, but Thea wasn't. Logically speaking, who didn't know how to run with their two long legs? Originally, she wanted to compete with reverse lightning, but after running a few steps, she discovered a problem. Reverse lightning was wearing anti-friction tights and a tightly covered head cover. It could be said that the whole outfit was designed for racing. What was her outfit? God's punishment robe. Hayati had considered her as a goddess, so she had designed a woman's robe with a tight waist. It looked really beautiful from a distance, but the scope of this outfit definitely didn't include racing. She ran 2 steps and stopped. It was really strange. She was wearing a big robe, and with her blonde hair, she didn't have the protection of her lightning speed. Facing air resistance, she ran like a lunatic. Thea wasn't good at speed, but for a big account like her who was about to max level, there was no shortcoming. She could run very fast if she didn't care about anything. But now for her image she couldn't do that. She felt a little regretful and gave up the idea of racing with reverse lightning, but she still wanted to see his speed. With her unparalleled mastery of teleportation, she began to use short-range teleportation to increase the distance between the two sides. From a distance it looked like a mage flashing, rushing forward with a whoosh. Reverse lightning had never seen such a strange way of moving. He was very confident in his lightning speed. "I don't care where you run. I will chase with all my strength." For a moment, a sky blue shadow was in front and a red lightning bolt was behind. The two of them began to compete in speed. They went west from Seaside through Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and finally into Texas. The two of them didn't go to the big city, but instead ran as fast as lightning on the road. Of course, this was for against lightning. Thea herself didn't need to use much mana, and she also saw a lot of things along the way. From the perspective of the law of speed, reverse lightning was not too far away from the Flash himself. In other words, whatever speed the Flash had, Reverse lightning had roughly the same speed. At this moment, Thea felt like she was a level 100 player fighting against a level 60 player. Was her opponent fast? It was indeed fast, and as time passed, the speed of reverse lightning also increased rapidly. However, it was not to the point of despair. According to her rough estimate, it was initially around 1,000 kilometers per hour, but now it had increased to around 1,500 kilometers per hour. There was no cover around the road, and reverse lightning couldn't catch up with Thea no matter how hard he tried. At this point, he already knew that he couldn't catch up with this woman, at least not with the lightning speed in his body. Panting and kicking, reverse lightning secretly gritted his teeth. When he recovered his full strength, he would definitely teach her a lesson. In an instant, he suddenly realized a problem. How could he be so tired? One must know that he could run hundreds of laps around the earth without stopping. Now it was just a few minutes of chasing. How could he be tired? You noticed it? Let me see the essence of your power. The reason why reverse lightning was so tiring was naturally because of magic. Energy Drain, a very high-end necromancy spell, was naturally the quintessence of Morgan Le Fay's magic book. She had long since placed it on the magic rope, and it was directly triggered when reverse lightning was tripped. Thea not only absorbed his life force but also a lot of his spiritual power, willpower, and a lot of other things including his lightning speed. She couldn't do it when she was invisible in Central City, but naturally she didn't have to worry about this today. She stretched out her hand, and a large red arc wrapped in divine power was taken out of his body. Damn! Seeing this scene, reverse lightning's eyes widened. I've always been the one to steal other people's lightning speed, but today I'm the one being robbed. Are you still a hero of justice? I'm going to complain. The red arc was very rebellious. It kept hitting the divine power barrier, wanting to return to reverse lightning's body. What is this? She asked knowingly. I don't know. Reverse lightning answered simply. What are you looking for? Thea was too lazy to play with him. Her body floated in the air, and she looked down at reverse lightning. Are you stupid? I can fly. Reverse lightning was a little speechless. He didn't have the ability to fly. Thea saw that he didn't answer, so she continued. Is the yellow lightning in Central City related to you? Who are you? When reverse lightning heard this, his eyes were a little evasive. Yes, their abilities were so similar that even a fool would know that they were related. If she found the flash, it would definitely alert the enemy and cause a series of consequences. Reverse lightning was now really afraid of this world. If the flash beside him changed again, he didn't know what to do. He rolled his eyes and decided to make up a lie. We're together. We're looking for a way home. His words were both true and false. He explained his purpose, and with the good reputation of the Flash, he tied the two of them together and disguised them as a do-gooder duo. In his impression, superheroes were simply too easy to fool. It was true that they were strong, but they were all too naive. The truth was just as he expected. The good reputation of the Flash helped him, and the superheroes opposite him fell for it. Thea laughed secretly, but she didn't expose him. Her attitude became a little more amiable. A way home? You're not from this world? Are you from a parallel universe or a different time period? Reverse Lightning was a little surprised by her sharpness. However, Thea's reputation as a great scientist was still very intimidating. He wouldn't underestimate her knowledge. After all, they had chatted in reality before. He coughed twice. He was also wondering whether he was in a parallel universe or a different time period. Why did it feel like the combination of these two options was the real answer? The bitter Reverse Lightning could only skip the parallel universe option. He said bitterly, "We're from the future." Seeing that he was implying the Flash in his words, Thea wanted to laugh. This guy also knew the importance of disguise. People from the future? The Heaven's Eye Society had previously captured a woman from the 31st century called Queen Emerald Eye, and a man from the 64th century called Magician was on the run. Which year did you transmigrate from? Holy shit. Is this for real? Reverse Lightning seemed to have been struck by lightning again. Thea's words made his jaw drop. This was indeed not the world he was familiar with. The 31st century was already very scary. What era was the 64th century? Hadn't the Earth exploded yet? He said a little embarrassedly, "We're from the 25th century. Thea nodded silently and began to show off her acting skills. Do you need our help? No need, no need. Reverse Lightning hurriedly rejected this proposal. He didn't dare to let Barry Allen appear in front of these superheroes. Once the two sides confronted each other, even a fool would know that someone was lying. Chapter 580. Thea expressed her regret for not being able to help others, and kindly introduced the scale of the superheroes on Earth. You see, we have 3 Kryptonians and 2 Martians. All of them are super powerful combat forces. The rest of the Earthlings have a lot of cheats, too many to count. Knowing that Reverse Lightning had never been to another planet, she took out the words she used to fool General Zod and introduced the universe to Reverse Lightning. Earth had 2,814 sectors, and there were 7,200 official Green Lanterns and the same number of reserve Green Lanterns in the universe. In short, we are all righteous people in this world. Are you happy to hear that? Reverse Lightning, who was also a righteous person, hypnotized himself to express that he was very happy and excited. We are just looking for a way home and doing some good deeds. We won't waste your time. After that, the two waved goodbye happily, and Reverse Lightning ran back to Central City with a bitter face. Thea went straight home. Reverse Lightning should be quiet for a few days. Extreme Speed was such an unconventional and anti-scientific person. Thea decided to play with him. Back in the laboratory, she didn't rest. Instead, she took out the small ball of speed that she took from Reverse Lightning. After studying it for an hour, she had no choice but to seal it and put it away. Just as she couldn't understand death, she couldn't understand this extreme speed. Maybe it was contrary to her deity position. The god of trade and speed? The god of wealth and speed? The two didn't match at all. The source and the compatibility were too different. She could only comfort herself with this. Reverse Lightning was so frightened by her that he trembled. He no longer dared to wander around in the middle of the night. Instead, he focused all his energy on training Barry Allen. Even Psyker and Caitlin had to work around the clock. The two of them complained that they couldn't take it. Reverse Lightning ignored their complaints and focused on leveling up Barry Allen, so that he could use his power to return to his own time and space. He didn't want to stay in such an unlucky world for a minute longer. At the end of the month, the Spaceship Explorer, which was jointly built by Quinn Group, Palmer Group and Road Technologies, successfully arrived on Mars. More than 100 scientists and workers used mature nanotechnology equipment to build a simple residence on the surface of Mars. When the news spread back to the country, many media outlets went into a frenzy. Humanity had never been so close to the interstellar era. Thea continued to work hard to increase her reputation. Ray Palmer and Maxwell Rhodes from Rhodes Technologies also did not let go of this opportunity. The three of them used various opportunities to promote the convenience of the interstellar era. Naturally, the stocks of the three companies soared. The major countries in the world could not hold back their demands. For an entire month, all the launch centers were busy, and the population of Mars quickly exceeded 5,000. The aircraft carrier, the space battleship, was already in its final stages. In just one more month, it would be able to fly directly into space. During this process, the help provided by the Red House scientists was unparalleled. Although Dr. Sarah Stone was very unwilling to weaponize alien technology, he could only compromise in the big picture. He contributed a lot of practical individual weapons to prevent the possible interstellar war that might follow. Sia felt that his paranoia was quite serious, but she did not intervene too much. She could not tell the doctor that IBM International Trade, a neutral interstellar business alliance, had long been secretly controlled by her. When the time came, all he needed to do was wave his flag and shout his battle cry, and it would be fine. Creating pressure for them and turning it into motivation was the right way to go. Therefore, she should still increase the sense of crisis that they should feel. Hey Thea. Not long after she started work, Oliver, who had always been lazy, came looking for her. The two of them agreed to visit Barry Allen. In theory, because of Oliver's friendly match with Shadow, he still did not know that Barry had turned into the Flash. Oliver was a very stubborn person, but he was quite good to his friends. When he found out that Barry had just woken up after being in a coma for 9 months, Oliver prepared to call his sister, who had amazing medical skills, to visit him. Thea sorted out the order and felt that it was not against her principles. She also wanted to see if Reverse Lightning was behaving properly. The siblings drove directly to Central City. Thea was still slowly adjusting her state of mind. She did not want to become like Heron Mill one day, treating everyone as a burden. This was because, according to the Martian hunter, Heron Mill was once a very kind and caring god. However, time had eroded his mind. Countless years of life had caused him to forget his original intentions, resulting in a tragic end. Batman and the Martian hunter had said on various occasions that she was becoming more and more ethereal and unpredictable. The words of these two wise men rang an alarm bell in Thea. She no longer used magic in her daily life. She deliberately maintained a positive and enthusiastic attitude, in an attempt to alleviate her psychological discomfort. Oliver's car was very fast. In less than 2 hours, they had entered the central city. Speaking of cars, Thea had equipped the Green Arrow team with new equipment. Perhaps due to economic reasons in the original space-time, Oliver's vehicle was a small motorcycle. How low was that? Look at Batman's equipment and look at yours. Thea directly threw his small motorcycle into outer space. All kinds of black technology vehicles were installed on it. All kinds of polymer combat suits, fighter jets, gliders, tanks, robotic arms, and a set of speed-type power armor. The main material of the power armor was the body of the cheetah god that they had obtained when they arrested the leopard lady. Even if it was not as good as the Batcave, it could not be too shabby. After 2 years of accumulation, Oliver's driving skills were now at a level of 6. He could even be thrown into Akina Mountain to make a name for himself. Barry was now in good health. He certainly would not stroll around during work hours like the two idlers. He was still working in the Midtown police station. Thanks to Thea's high reputation and her sponsorship of the national police system, everyone knew her. Knowing that she was looking for Barry, everyone was envious and brought her into Barry's evidence collection office. The two siblings were waiting for him. Oliver was bored to death as he flipped through the newspaper. Thea looked up at the skylight. It was here that lightning struck Barry Allen and created the Flash. Why did the power of speed choose Barry among countless ordinary space-time, countless universes and countless planets? No one could tell whether it was inevitable or accidental. It could only be attributed to the wonders of fate. After a while, footsteps were heard. Barry Allen, who looked like a good student, opened the door. "Oliver, Thea." The handsome boy greeted brightly. It was obvious that he had regained his confidence. Thea was a little speechless. "What kind of eyes were you looking at?" He saw Oliver the moment he entered the door, and then he saw Thea. It was a strange scene. Thea's charm attribute was almost exploding, and Oliver was just a handsome guy among ordinary people. Chapter 581. Let me introduce you to Ayers West. Barry introduced the dark-skinned girl beside him to the siblings. Speaking of which, the dark-skinned girl was also very strange. She grew up with Barry, but she didn't know that he liked her. Everyone around her knew that Barry liked her, but she was so slow that she didn't know. In the end, when the Flash mustered up his courage to confess, he made a big move, which was to say, "I've always treated you like an older brother." The Flash's blood stained his clothes red. The four of them actually knew each other before, but they didn't talk much. They chatted for a while and then went to eat. Barry wanted to show off his ability to Oliver a few times, but because Ayers was beside him, he forced himself to hold back. Thea wanted to laugh when she saw Barry's hesitant look. What was even funnier was that she deliberately glanced at Reverse Lightning, who was in the cutting-edge technology laboratory, and he was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. He couldn't help but be anxious. If Barry showed off his speed, then his previous words would be completely exposed. What about traveling through time and space was true, but his relationship with Barry was completely fake. Reverse Lightning was so anxious that he was scratching the wall, but he had to pretend to be calm in front of Psyker and Caitlin. Fortunately, Ayers was with him the whole time, so Barry didn't get a chance to show off his speed to his good friend. Just as Reverse Lightning was secretly observing and felt that today's incident had passed without any danger, an accident happened. Just as the siblings were about to drive back, gunshots rang out from the other side of the road and the shouts of the crowd. Barry was in a dilemma. Should he turn into the Flash in front of Ayers, or should he let Thea and the others deal with it? This was a difficult question for him. Fortunately, he didn't hesitate for long. A piercing pain released him from the problem. "My leg. It hurts." Barry suddenly sat on the ground, hugging his leg. This made Ayers and Thea stunned. "You were running and jumping just now. This illness came too quickly. Let me take a look. Thea wasn't bragging. She turned her multifunction wristwatch and started to check Barry's leg. He thought that he wanted to send airs away so that he could be the Flash himself. Unfortunately, that was not the case. His leg was seriously injured. This kind of injury was very strange. Even with the support of the power of seraphic speed, it would not heal in a short time. There was no need to guess. It must have been the god of speed expert Reverse Lightning who had done something to him. For him to be able to research the god of speed himself, his scientific attainments were extremely deep. Barry did not know that he had been plotted against. He was only concerned about the other side of the street. He grabbed Thea's hand and said, "Don't worry about me. Save the people over there first." His eyes were firm and decisive, and Thea could only follow his instructions. After all, Reverse Lightning would only make him unable to run today, not kill him. Thea gave Oliver a look. It was not suitable for Green Arrow to appear in this kind of situation. Thea did not have such concerns. She flew over to Ayers, who was surprised. It was only a short block, so they arrived in the blink of an eye. Just as she was about to make her move, she saw a flash of red lightning speeding towards her. The two of them arrived at the scene almost at the same time. The red lightning even waved at her in a friendly manner. What was the meaning of this? Thea was a little confused for a moment. It took her a long time to understand what was going on. Was Reverse Lightning trying to cover up his lie of being a hero by defeating the Flash in one move, and then running out to be a superhero himself? Thea came to a conclusion that shocked even herself. She did not know whether to laugh or cry. This person was really giving it his all. In order to return to his original time and space in a short time, he could only use this method of patching up one lie to cover up another lie to avoid the powerful superhero force that Thea mentioned. It was really hard for him. When Thea saw the person who was fighting the police officers, the eerie sense of déjà vu became even stronger. Who did she see? It was Captain Lung, who was dressed like an Eskimo. At this moment, this fierce general was wearing sunglasses and holding a sci-fi-looking weapon. The gun spewed out a large amount of cold air, causing the Central City police officers to flee in all directions. At this critical moment, one of the heroes of justice, Reverse Lightning, rushed up to him. What the hell was this? Reverse Lightning fighting against Captain Lung. At this time, Captain Lung was not the one on the Wave Rider, but in the original time and space when he had just obtained the freeze gun. His freeze gun was still very primitive. Unsurprisingly, it was developed by Psyker after he obtained the theory from Thea. Later, it was stolen by Captain Lung. The power of the freeze gun was stronger than the one in the original time and space but weaker than the final version. Captain Lung's several shots were easily dodged by Reverse Lightning. His movements were as slow as a snail in the eyes of those who were rushing, but he was also a smart person. He very insidiously targeted the surrounding people who were watching the show. Reverse Lightning was about to curse in his heart. Whether these people died or not had nothing to do with him, but Thea was still watching outside so he could only bite the bullet and save them. Seeing this scene, Captain Lung was even more convinced that this guy was a hero of justice. Bang! Bang! There were two muffled sounds and he played a little trick. He first attacked a distant target, then quickly turned the muzzle to attack a nearby police officer. Reverse Lightning was tired of it. He could not think of a good way at the moment, so he could only counter the moves as they came. Unfortunately, he had underestimated his own speed, and Thea had previously absorbed the power of speed from his body, which had a subtle effect on him. After he saved two people in a row, he almost failed to dodge the frost ray. The cold air swept past his calf. Absolute Zero was no joke. Reverse Lightning's combat experience was 100 times richer than Barry Allen's at this time. He hurriedly mobilized the power of speed on his leg, trying to accelerate the cell healing. Unfortunately, Captain Lung had already predicted this. He had already aimed his gun at Reverse Lightning, and his finger was about to pull the trigger. At this critical moment, Thea knew that it was not suitable for her to watch the show. She used her divine weapon to block in front of Reverse Lightning, and waved her hand to create a wind wall in front of Captain Lung's surprised eyes. Captain Lung was an ordinary person. He was blown away by the strong wind and pressed against the wall like a mural. He fainted immediately. "Are you okay?" Thea held back her laughter and asked Reverse Lightning. He was also a good man, pretending to be fine. Thank you for your help. He did not wait for Thea's reply and ran away like a wisp of smoke. He had no choice but to run. He had used the excuse of going to the toilet to escape. He had already wasted a few minutes saving people. Syker and Caitlin were smart people. It would be troublesome if they found out something was wrong. He had to go back immediately. He mobilized a large amount of the power of speed to wrap up his wound, and ran like the wind back to the cutting-edge laboratory. He quickly changed into the alias of Dr. Wales, and slowly walked in his wheelchair. There was no need to mention the gloominess in his heart. His leg had already been injured by the frost gun, and after running for a while, it had worsened the injury. Fortunately, he had the foresight to see that Dr. Wales was also in a wheelchair every day. Otherwise, it would be hard to explain how he could cripple his leg after going to the toilet. Chapter 582. Reverse Lightning didn't forget about Barry Allen. He also needed to treat his wounds. He sent Syker and Caitlin to pick him up. His excuse was ready-made. His good friend Barry was injured. Why didn't they hurry up and bring him back? After the two left, he finally had time to treat his wounds. It was a ghastly sight. There was a palm-sized area on his calf that was frostbitten. The regeneration of his cells was suppressed. Fortunately, Reverse Lightning's knowledge was not ordinary. He concocted a lot of medicine on the spot and applied it to the wound. However, it would take at least 10 days for the wound to recover. He had just finished treating the wound when the rest of the team came back. Thea, Olivier the Flash, and a few of his friends ran back. Ayres was very anxious. Don't worry, leave it to us. We have done a lot of research on his injuries. Reverse Lightning calmly comforted Ayres. At the same time, he kept looking at Thea. Why is this girl still here? You have so many things to do. Staying in our central city will affect humanity's interstellar travel. You should hurry up and leave. His prayers came true. A few minutes later, Thea and her brother received a call at the same time. Olivier's team had found the Count of Vertigo's new stronghold. Thea received a call from the company, saying that there was an urgent matter to discuss with her. This disappointed Thea, who had been waiting for Reverse Lightning to lie, greatly. However, she didn't waste any time and flew to the two places with Olivier. After dealing with the urgent matter, Thea turned her attention to Reverse Lightning. Reverse Lightning gave Barry an excuse of muscle wear and tear. He also pointed out how unscientific and irregular his running movements were. In other words, this injury was caused by the accumulation of small problems from daily running. After that, he slapped Barry and sent him to the underground tunnel to practice running. The lie could be maintained for a while but not forever. Reverse Lightning just wanted to accumulate enough strength to return to his own world as soon as possible. He was annoyed by this group of superheroes. Unfortunately, he was smart, but others were not fools. After lying in bed for a whole day, Barry still discovered the problem. Reverse Lightning was running back and forth under the watchful eyes of so many people. How could it not be noticed? Especially the matter about the red lightning that Barry had been pursuing for more than 20 years. Now that it seemed to be showing signs of surfacing, he could no longer hold back. He directly went to the metropolis to ask Thea, who had seen the red lightning that day. She did not hide anything, nor did she add anything to the story. She repeated what she had said about the lightning that day. Barry, are you from the future? She pretended to be curious and asked, Future, your sister? Why didn't I know that I was a transmigrator? Barry immediately denied this conclusion. I'm definitely not. My birth information and family records are all well documented. How can I be someone from the future? That's ridiculous. If I'm not, does that mean the red lightning bolt is someone from the future? Did he kill my mother? Why did he do that? Thea naturally wouldn't say that he was copying history and creating the Flash. She immediately shook her head and didn't know. Barry didn't expect any outsiders to know about this, so he could only go back and think about it himself. He couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he tried. Naturally, he asked for help from a few friends in the cutting-edge laboratory. Reverse Lightning pretended to be shocked and helped Barry come up with ideas to deal with him. The feeling was indescribable. This was also his helplessness. In fact, he could ignore the trouble caused by Captain Lung, but the identity of a hero of justice was a little useful to him. Should he provoke a bunch of superheroes to investigate him or let Barry investigate him alone? This was his choice before he deliberately exposed his whereabouts. He chose the latter. Barry was alone and he was under his nose every day. It wasn't too difficult to fool him. The fight with Captain Lung was his proof of allegiance to the superheroes. Whether it was useful or not, he had to stabilize the forces outside first. If the superheroes outside didn't investigate him, he would have enough time to transmigrate back. Reverse Lightning was betting that Barry wouldn't let outsiders participate in his mother's murder case. In the end, he won the bet. Barry only asked about the Red Lightning and didn't say anything about helping. He was focused on investigating the incident from beginning to end. Time passed slowly, and for a moment, everyone seemed to be very busy. Green Arrow was learning from the Ninja Master and fighting criminals. The Flash was looking for the real murderer, and Superman was living his life at home. Louise was pregnant, and a child that might have Earth and Kryptonian blood was about to be born. The Martian hunter was also busy teaching his niece. His niece was also a naughty child. After getting familiar with Earth for a few days, she accidentally saw Princess Starfire's live broadcast and said that she wanted to be a celebrity. This made the Martian hunter very worried. Batman was even busier. Because the interstellar travel plan was brought forward, this guy was moving his experimental base. He was very generous. Thea only had to build an underground laboratory, but this guy built his laboratory on the moon. The speed of human development on Mars was getting faster and faster. His lunar base could be discovered at any time, so he could only move it further away. After a few inspections, he finally moved to Dion. He was busy for half a month before the project was completed. Thea was also very busy. The modification of the mothership had entered a critical moment, and the military had invested a lot of effort into it. All kinds of materials, manpower, and technology were invested regardless of the cost. Almost all the scientists that could be gathered were gathered together, and they were doing the final adjustments. The military took out the USS Ford electromagnetic nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, which had not been in active service for a long time, to do a new modification. On this day, the sun was shining brightly. Many politicians, business tycoons, and scientists gathered at the U.S. military base in Guam. Among them were many scientists from the Quinn Group, Dr. Sarah Stone from the Red House, many generals in the military, the president who had not appeared in public for a long time, and a group of government officials. There was also Sia, Ray Palmer, Maxwell Rhodes, and a large number of financial groups that supported the military. They were all present. They were going to watch the entire process of the mothership's ignition and liftoff at the command center. The commander of the mothership was Major General Alice, a relatively young female general. Thea looked at it when she first heard the name, but she gave up when she found that it had nothing to do with Resident Evil. This test flight was a bit confidential. No one was confident that such a large ship could fly into the sky. Even Thea did not dare to make any guarantees. This was also the reason why she was there in person. If something went wrong in the middle and the whole thing fell, she would be able to catch it. No one dared to call the reporters. Everyone who had a stake in the project silently watched the preliminary inspection of the warship. The cost of the hull alone was more than $20 billion, and the cost of the later modification would be quadrupled. This was the main reason why the military could not withstand the pressure, and took in the funds of the financial groups. As for how much the financial groups benefited from the government, they did not care. The young Major General Alice was methodically issuing orders. The nuclear-powered reactor began to operate, and the 4 rotors in pairs began to exert power. The rotors and the jet engine formed a combined force, slowly pushing the 80,000-ton aircraft carrier, which had been reduced to 50,000 tons by replacing the vacuum tube tungsten alloy with a large amount of hafnium metal, slowly into the air. It wasn't just the people in the command room who were nervous. Major General Alice, who was on the Ford, was also nervous. If such a big iron lump fell, she would be done for. Wasn't the plane equipped with an ejection parachute function? If such a big thing really fell, not many people would survive. Chapter 583. Alice, who held the rank of Major General, was well aware of the dangers involved, but she really had no other choice. The military had a ceiling for women. No matter how hard she worked, she would only be a Major General for the rest of her life. Rather than that, she might as well take the risk. So when she was selecting a commander, She was given this risky mission under the stunned gazes of all the male generals. Now she was in a state of confusion. To outsiders, the commander stood alone on the bridge with an extraordinary aura, but in fact, her heart was pounding and her palms were sweating. Seeing the mothership rise bit by bit, her fear did not lessen. Instead, it increased. She might survive if she fell half a meter off the ground, but if she fell 100 meters off the ground, then she could only pray to God. The Ford was supposed to have a crew of 1,100, with a flight team of 600. This was just a test flight, and the ship's weapons and aircraft were not yet equipped. In addition, everyone in the new era was generally afraid of death. Now, there were only about 300 people on the aircraft carrier. These were the Pentagon's painstaking efforts to select them from the 500,000 Navy soldiers. Major General Alice was now leading the 300 warriors as they flew upwards uneasily. In the blink of an eye, they had flown over 1,000 meters. The nuclear power was working normally, and the 4 rotors were in line with the theoretical test data. But the ground command was still anxious. "I'll go out and take a look," Thea said and flew out. Her current situation was very similar to that of the Iron Man next door. Almost everyone knew she had superpowers. Except for the fact that she did not shout, "I'm the Iron Man," in front of the reporters like Tony did. She was treated pretty much the same. At first, everyone was a little afraid of her, but after a while they realized they were not affected at all and gradually got used to it. The higher-ups were relieved to see her go out. At least it was a safety measure. Although there were no reporters, in fact, military satellites from various countries were watching Guam. If more than 300 people fell to their deaths, it would be difficult to explain. 1,500 meters, reporting to ground command. The mothership has taken off steadily and is beginning to accelerate. Major General Alice saw Thea too. She more or less knew what was going on, so she gave the order at the right time. The rotors began to rotate at full capacity, and the mothership rose rapidly. 5,000 meters, temperature drop. Activate the broadband active field thermostat. 15,000 meters, reporting to the ground, we are about to leave the troposphere. 28,000 meters. The mothership is operating normally in the stratosphere. The clouds here are beautiful. After rushing out of the troposphere, she suddenly realized that the clouds were already below her. Major General Alice was overwhelmed with emotions. She couldn't help but express her feelings of having survived a disaster. The Ground Command Center responded with warm applause. Although the cost of the project was too high, at least the experiment was a success. After the biggest difficulty of lifting off was solved, the rest was much easier to handle. The ground commander then directed the mothership to fly east back to Andrews Air Force Base. Yes, this thing took off from the naval base and flew back to the Air Force Base. The ownership of the mothership could no longer be divided between the Navy and the Air Force. Several generals from different military branches fought over this matter, but they still couldn't come to a conclusion. The propulsion system of the mothership was taken from them. The Red House scientists disassembled Abinsu's spaceship and used a computer scan to install 5 high-powered propulsion systems on the mothership. The original speed of the mothership was only a few dozen knots on the surface of the sea, but now it was increased to Mach 3. The mothership timely activated the new protective shield developed by the former Quinn Corporation based on the Luther Corporation's foundation, and flew back to Washington at lightning speed. Thea also followed along to protect them. There were no accidents until the mothership landed, which made her sigh in relief. After waiting for a few hours, many politicians took a special plane back to Washington and sent their late condolences to Major General Alice, who had accomplished this feat. The first few sentences were still normal, but as they spoke, they went off topic. The Navy believed that the flying unit of the mothership had to be Mach 3, while the Air Force believed that it had to be Mach 3. The two groups of people then argued about the personnel structure, clothing, military ranks, and a lot of other issues. It seemed like a small issue, but in fact it was a matter of who would be the boss and who would be the second in command. The successful test flight of the mothership also meant that the Navy would gradually withdraw from the stage of history. Merging with the Air Force was the opinion of many knowledgeable people. Then came the question: should they rely on the Navy at this stage to seize the leadership position and lead the Air Force, or should they be led by the Air Force? This was the question that the military leaders were most concerned about. Thea did not have time to listen to their nonsense. She told the vice president to report if there were any problems and return to Star City alone. When she was in the sky just now, she received a call from Felicity. She did not say anything in detail. Thea was afraid that the mothership would fall, so she did not have time to deal with it. Now that things had come to an end, she finally had time to deal with it. Thea directly teleported to Felicity's villa. This big sister had been the vice president of the Quinn Corporation for many years, so her wallet was bulging. She did not hesitate to buy a mansion in Star City. What happened? Caitlin is also here. Oh, isn't this Ronnie? Aren't you dead? In addition to the two women in the room, there was also a destitute man sitting in the room. He turned his head, and Thea was slightly stunned when she saw his face. The man was Caitlin's fiancé, but he died in the explosion of the underground pipeline during the particle accelerator explosion in Central City. Caitlin was now the Frost Killer, but she did not forget their old relationship. This was also the reason why she immediately rushed over when Felicity contacted her. Professor Quinn, I'm not that young man, Ronnie Raymond. I'm Martin Stein. Do you remember me? The man asked nervously. She remembered, wasn't he the fat old man on the Wave Rider? Although Thea was not very familiar with many people, she still knew the first generation of Firestorm. Coincidentally, she also knew the two people who formed him, Ronnie Raymond and Martin Stein. Although she knew him, she could not immediately show that she already knew. After thinking for a while, she asked, Professor Martin Stein from the University of Chicago? Yes, we talked before. This young man Ronnie also said that he knew you. That's why we came to find you. The man was very excited. It was obvious that the fusion of the two people was driving him crazy. With all due respect, Professor, how did you become like this? The one who occupied Ronnie's body was the fat old man. He told Thea about the explosion that day. The creature chose? During the reconstruction, the creature chose the most optimal setting, which is Ronnie's young body and your excellent brain. So now you are the one who is controlling the body. Is that what you mean, Professor? Thea made her own judgment after hearing the connection. Yes, Professor Quinn is indeed an expert in biomedicine. You are absolutely right. The man wanted to hug her leg and cry. He finally met someone who understood. Chapter 584. Professor, you want me to help you separate the two of you, right? Thea asked again. Yes, you're absolutely right. Professor Stein almost shouted at her. Thea ignored Stein's salted face and split a portion of her spiritual energy to scan the two of them. After scanning for 2 minutes and combining it with the science she already knew, she sighed. Professor, because of nuclear fission, the molecular structure of the two of you has completely fused together. This is your expertise in nuclear physics. You should know that even if the two of you are separated, you will no longer be normal humans. Both your immune system and hematopoietic function will be severely damaged. Stein was depressed. I know that we have already missed the best treatment period, but at that time, the two of us were entangled with each other and were in a daze for a long time. We only gradually regained our consciousness recently. Thea also started to think. In the original timeline, Reverse Lightning acted as a living bomb and used the black technology on her battlesuit to decompose the nuclear power that formed the foundation of the two of them. Did she have such a thing? She really didn't have it on hand at the moment. She had a few technological products that were somewhat related, but they needed major modifications. The technology aspect was a little troublesome, but she had magic. Just like how she decomposed Miss Abby and Professor Holland, she could separate the different souls and then find a dead body to reincarnate into. Everything would be fine. Unfortunately, she was a hero of justice and couldn't do it. The fat old man was so old-fashioned that he wouldn't agree to it. Basically, she couldn't use methods that involved moral aspects such as reincarnation, cloning, and so on. Thea could only think of another way. Separating from the original body was the only way. Professor, do you believe in magic? The fat old man didn't believe in it at all, but he didn't have a good idea at the moment. Now, as long as she could separate them, he would even try witchcraft and immortal arts, let alone magic. Nodding against her will, Thea snapped her fingers. That's easy. I'll suppress your body, and then use an illusion to simulate the explosion that day. Let your body think that it went through another fission, then the two of you will be separated again. Hypnosis to mobilize my own subconscious? Stein continued to use scientific methods to forcefully explain Thea's treatment methods, making the young lady very helpless. Professor Stein heaved a sigh of relief when he thought that he had mastered the treatment steps. He thought that he would have to use something like a blood sacrifice totem. Thea's treatment method did not deviate too much from what he knew. Will my body explode because of the stimulation? Stein was worried that it would cause a nuclear explosion. After all, they were in Star City, a city with a population comparable to Gotham. Don't worry about that. Caitlin, show the professor. Thea gestured to Caitlin. Caitlin's palms began to emit cold air, and the temperature in the room began to drop. Absorbing energy? Stein had been dealing with all kinds of energy his whole life. He quickly analyzed that Caitlin's ability was not a simple freezing ability, but a heat absorption ability. This was the complete opposite of his nuclear energy ability. He looked at Caitlin in surprise and finally felt relieved. His self-destruction was not something that could be done at will. The chain reaction also needed time. As long as the initial energy of the explosion was absorbed, it would not explode. Thea did not let down her guard. After all, this was Star City, and she had set up a few barriers. Some were triggered, some were energy-absorbing. Professor, I'm going to start. What you need to do is to remember that there are two of you in your mind. Stein pursed his lips and calmed down a little. He gestured to Thea to start. He did not even see what was going on before he realized that he was outside again. The dark night, the pouring rain, and the crowd around him were vivid in his mind. This was the time when the particle accelerator exploded. The people around him ran out, shouting all kinds of things. He was the only one who stood there in a daze. The particle explosion did not retreat because of the people running for their lives. Came as expected. A ray of golden energy hit Professor Stein directly. Rodney Raymond's soul was also wrapped in the energy. The memories of the two were merged again through nuclear fission and the dark matter produced by the explosion. However, they still remembered their mission. Thea in the outside world also used her psychic power to hint that they were not the same person. She was not as good as the Martian hunter in this aspect, but it was not difficult for her to do some simple operations. Not the same person. The two different lives were tangled together. Thea's hint was like a thin film that formed a barrier between the two. At the same time, the willpower of the two began to work. I'm not him. He's not me. The two rejected each other at the same time on the level of consciousness. Their bodies that were on the verge of merging were purposely guided away. The state in the outside world was a ball of energy fluctuation. After that, it exploded violently. After the strong light disappeared, the two slightly burnt people were lying on the ground on opposite sides. My floor. Felicity looked at the blackened floor with a little heartache. Thea could only smile. She was only focused on protecting her body, and did not pay attention to the energy under her feet. Even if there was no fission at all, just a small leak in the initial reaction was enough to burn a big hole in Felicity's villa. Miss Smokey, I'll pay for it. The fat old man, Martin Stein, stood up shakily. When he saw that he had returned to normal, he was overjoyed. As a big name in international physics, he had the money to pay for a piece of the floor. On the other side, Ronnie Raymond also stood up slowly. He held Caitlin's hand and did not know what to say. Things were still the same, but people had changed. On the surface, the two of them did not change, but in reality, they were no longer the couple that was about to enter the marriage hall. Thea checked the two of them again. Professor Ronnie, your situation is really a very strange. I don't know much about nuclear physics, but the two of you are now weaker than normal people. After all, you were separated from a strong body, and, seeing that the two of them were a little pale, she still had to say what she wanted to say. In fact, in the big explosion of the particle accelerator, from a biological point of view, your lives were actually dead. It was only the nuclear energy that created a new body. Nuclear energy is the foundation of your life. This is something that cannot be changed. You have to periodically. Thea was still thinking about how to phrase it when the fat old man hurriedly interrupted her. I can think of a way. Thank you for your help. I'll take my leave first. After that, the fat old man angrily pulled the door open and left. What nonsense! How could the human body be made of nuclear energy? The fat old man did not believe that he had become a freak. Even if he had become like Thea said, He felt that he could solve the problem with his own knowledge. Wasn't it just nuclear energy? The old man had been researching for more than 50 years and had won all the awards in this field. He was confident that he could solve all the problems in the field of nuclear physics. Chapter 585. Thea was not angry about the fat old man slamming the door and leaving. After all, it was Felicity's house door that was slammed, and it had nothing to do with her. However, she had a new understanding of the old man's stubbornness. Wasn't it just a change in life form? Was there a need to react so strongly? Ronnie Redmond's expression was equally ugly. Although he wasn't as outstanding as Syker and Caitlin, he was still quite capable to have been chosen by reverse lightning. It wasn't hard to guess what Sia had left unsaid after connecting the dots. Using the excuse that his thoughts were in a mess, Ronnie quickly left. Both of their patients had run away. Fortunately, this was not a hospital or they would have been beaten to death. Did you pay the medical fees and run away? With the patients gone, the three women were free. Thea had just finished working on the mothership and was preparing to rest for 2 days. Felicity had become a habit of skipping work, and Caitlin did not want to go back to Central City. Reverse Lightning estimated that he could be exposed at any time, and trained Barry like crazy every day. It seemed that the stronger Barry's ability was, the faster his speed would recover. Caitlin had Thea as a huge source of information, so she was able to understand the situation. On the other hand, Syker was dumbfounded. He did not know what had happened to Professor Wales, who had always been a nice guy, to train Barry so hard. Similarly, Barry had a black face full of question marks. He had a high IQ among the superheroes, but he lacked key clues. If he did not connect Reverse Lightning and Professor Wales together, he would never find the truth. Now that the three women were extremely bored, they could only meet up to go shopping. Thanks to the social stability of Star City over the years, many large shopping malls and shopping streets had been established here. Star City's economy had already surpassed the devastated metropolis in Gotham, and it was truly a business capital. Thea pulled Felicity, Caitlin, and Raven Lowly, who was on high school holidays and staying at home, along. Then, she found that the female generals of the Green Arrow team were all in a daze. She pulled all of them together and formed a group to sweep the goods. Green Arrow Shadow, Black and White Canary Laurel Lance, Sarah Lance, and even the Ninja Master's daughter, Nissa, were forcefully dragged out. The 8 women bought whatever they saw. None of them were poor in the true sense of the word. Sarah and Nissa were assassins, and money was just a number to them. Although Laurel and Shadow were just ordinary public officials with a moderate income, they couldn't compete with their boyfriends, Oliver and Tommy, who were rich. The two of them swiped their boyfriends' bank cards. She bought all kinds of spring and summer clothes, bags, accessories, and all sorts of other things. Laurel liked the black mesh stockings very much, so they accompanied her for a long time. She had thought that it was just Laurel's personal interest, but she didn't expect the other girls to be so interested. Felicity was one of them, while Caitlin and Raven chose black stockings. Sarah Lance chose white stockings, and Nissa, the Ninja Master's daughter, who had an illicit relationship with her, also chose a few pairs of stockings. Thea originally had no interest in stockings, but seeing the girls trying them out in high spirits, she also chose a few pairs of different colors. Maybe she should go back and encourage Diana to try it out? The long-legged goddess, and she never wore stockings. Perhaps Diana could wear stockings and high heels, which would make it easier for her to have a good fight. The goddess of trade and wealth had a wicked thought. Every store had a door-to-door service. Swiping a card to pack up, someone would naturally deliver the goods to the address. The girls didn't need to carry large and small bags after shopping. After a crazy shopping spree, they went to the gym and went to the hot spring. Lying comfortably in the hot spring, Thea couldn't help but wonder if she should form a female Justice League in the future. In fact, there were many female heroes in this world, but they were basically the vassals of the male heroes, suffering first and enjoying later. People only knew how to praise Batman, and gloriously ignored the Batwoman, Huntress, and Batwoman behind him. The Green Arrow team also had this problem. There were more women than men. Of course, the men took on the heavy responsibility, but the hero world's disregard of the female heroes was a bit chilling. If Thea didn't rise, the Justice League in the future would only have Diana as a female veteran. Even a high school student like Steelbones could be a veteran, but Barbara, who was good at both civil and martial arts and had been in the industry for many years, could only be a bystander in the Batwoman team. This reflected the current situation of male and female heroes. The framework of the Female Justice League gradually took shape in Thea's mind. The first important indicator was combat power. Thea herself and Diana were the top combat power in the world at present. Supergirl and Fiora could also be recruited. In addition, the big lowly Raven's real strength was also fierce, but she didn't like to use it. There were also some remaining intermediate forces, such as the girls in front of her, the girls in Batman's team, the Sea King's wife and a few friends. In fact, the number was quite large. Thea lay in the pool happily, imagining the evil act of breaking up the Justice League. At this time, a female assistant walked to her side and said softly, "There's a Mr. Barry Allen who wants to see you." "Why is Barry looking for me?" Thea thought for a moment and immediately realized that it must be about the fat old man and Ronnie. She gave Caitlin a look and told them to continue playing. She wrapped herself in a bath towel and went to the rest area. Hi. Barry saw that she was only wrapped in a bath towel and her legs were exposed. He was a little dazzled for a moment and almost bit his tongue. After a long time, he remembered his purpose and coughed. "Miss Thea, do you know how to deal with Professor Stein's matter?" Sure enough, Thea understood. The fat old man was not unaware of his physical condition, but he still had a glimmer of hope. Now that he was a human-shaped nuclear bomb, he was accumulating energy every minute and every second. If he lost control for a moment, it would cause a nuclear explosion. Although it might not be a big one, it would not be a problem to flatten a central city with a population of 6 million. Barry was usually so upset that he could not sleep at night when he saw children falling down. Now that a nuclear bomb was right beside him, it would be strange if he could not be worried. Professor Stein was not a bad person, but a fat old man with a strong sense of justice. This made the rookie Flash completely helpless. His only choice was to ask for help. Professor Stein's emotions are very unstable. I left him in the Advanced Technology Laboratory. Do you have a way to solve it? Barry looked at her with a hint of hope. Thea almost laughed out loud. You're so righteous. You left a human-shaped nuclear bomb beside Reverse Lightning. Have you considered Reverse Lightning's feelings? Reverse Lightning must be cursing in his heart at this moment. Secretly killing the fat old man and getting rid of any future problems would be satisfying, but there was a 90% chance that the fat old man would explode. Reverse Lightning, who was injured by the freeze gun and had not recovered his speed to its peak, would not be able to run out of the range of the nuclear explosion. The chances of him dying were higher than the chances of him breaking through the time barrier and returning to his original time and space. Chapter 586. Professor Stein's problem is actually the same as Ronnie's. In order to maintain the balance of the nuclear energy in their bodies, they have to fuse every once in a while until the energy in their bodies stabilizes before they can separate again. However, fusing will definitely expose some of their private matters to each other. This is also the reason why the professor and Ronnie are so against it. Thea sat on the lounge chair. Her shining thighs seemed to reflect the light. However, the goddess had no self-awareness. She crossed her legs and spoke with confidence. Barry felt that his mouth was a little dry. He tried to put the distracting thoughts to the back of his mind. He repeatedly told himself that he should prioritize the 6 million old and young men in the central city. He also thought about his mother's death and his father's wrongful imprisonment. Finally, he managed to suppress the messy thoughts in his mind. The young lady really didn't realize that she had caused so much trouble for others. Let's go. Let's go and persuade the professor. Barry was a little troubled. Usually, in this kind of situation, he would naturally hug her and run all the way back. However, Thea's charm was too great now. He was afraid that he would fall into a ditch while running. That would be too embarrassing. Fortunately, Thea didn't make it difficult for him. She patted his shoulder with her jade-like hand. Let's go and come back quickly. Let's go. A sky blue light flashed. When Barry saw his surroundings clearly, he realized that he was back in the cutting-edge technology laboratory. Thea's bathrobe was also changed into a divine robe. She was dressed like a goddess. Faster than me. Barry couldn't help but think. Dr. Wells, long time no see. Thea first greeted Reverse Lightning. The old man pretended to be calm. In fact, he was cursing in his heart. Was there anyone more unlucky than him these days? He was just staying at home and the human nuclear bomb came to him for help. He even had to pretend to be welcoming. Now, facing Thea's greeting, he could only pretend that he was fine. He had never been better. After greeting Psycher, she went to the laboratory to visit the two patients. Ronnie Raymond sat on the ground with a terrible expression. The fat old man was still calculating hard, trying to solve all the problems with his science. "Doctor, do you have any good ideas?" Thea asked Reverse Lightning. "I'm sorry, I have no other choice." Reverse Lightning was speaking from the bottom of his heart. If they had approached him from the start, he might have had a solution. However, Thea had interfered and used a very idealistic method to separate the two of them. His black technology was no longer suitable for the current situation. In fact, Reverse Lightning was also very anxious. After all, no one wanted to see a nuclear bomb dangling in front of their eyes. However, he had no other choice. Nuclear energy was not a cutting-edge technology. In the 25th century, humans were all using clean energy. Nuclear energy, which was highly polluting and harmful, had long been abandoned. Reverse Lightning was a scientist, but he was not an all-rounder. In his time, no one researched nuclear energy. Purely from the perspective of nuclear physics, his attainments were not as good as Professor Stein's. "Professor Ronnie, you don't have much time left. You have to merge immediately, or the consequences will be unimaginable," Thea advised coldly. If they didn't listen to her, she would have to use force. Although her motive was different from Barry and the other heroes of justice, she would not give away the lives of 6 million people as a favor. The fat old man calculated for a day and went through everything he had learned. He found that he really couldn't solve the problem with his body. He was a little depressed and asked, "What happens after merging?" Sia thought for a moment and said something to Barry in a low voice. The Flash ran back and forth with a swoosh and handed her a very sci-fi square device. "Professor Ronnie, this is a portable nuclear power device that I developed. With just 4 devices, it can drive a behemoth like the Ford to fly continuously for a week. I'm now using its principle and operating it in reverse. It can absorb the excess nuclear energy in your body. There's also a regulating valve here. When the valve is open to the maximum, it will instantly absorb your energy, which means that you will be separated directly. When your body is full of energy, you will combine and use this device to separate. This is the only way I can think of. This is the only way." She briefly explained the principle to the old man. It was definitely not possible to use it directly. This finished product was from an aircraft carrier and had a diameter of more than 1 meter. Now, it needed to be miniaturized and portable. Thea still had to do some modifications. Fortunately, this was a laboratory. Whether it was Reverse Flash or the Flash's friends, they were all experts in technology. Especially the fat old man, who was a big shot in the nuclear physics field. Simplifying the chemical process wouldn't be a problem for them. "If we set the rotor in reverse, we can?" Thea was changing the circuit when suddenly, her vision turned black. Her supervision automatically switched to night vision. Only then did she realize what had happened. The cutting-edge technology laboratory had a power outage. "By the way, do you guys owe water and electricity bills?" Thea looked at them funnily. They all looked at Reverse Flash unconsciously. Reverse Flash, who was disguised as Dr. Wales, was a little scared, but he soon found the problem. The whole city has a power outage. Thea couldn't do anything about the large-scale power outage. She had night vision, but without power, the modification work couldn't continue. She could only put down the tools at hand and wait for the power to be restored. "Psycher, go start the backup generator." Reverse Flash wanted to get these 2 human-shaped nuclear bombs away from him as soon as possible. He didn't want to wait a minute more. However, before Psycher walked out of the room, he heard someone outside shouting, "Dr. Harrison Wales, I want to see you. I know you're in there. Come out." The person's voice was very loud and clear. It sounded like a human speaker. Thea looked outside and saw a young man in a leather jacket standing outside the door shouting. The person had dark circles under his eyes and electric arcs flashed in his palms. From his appearance, it didn't look like he was there to talk. Thea knew that they didn't have supervision, so she cast a miniature illumination spell and a water mirror spell to project the situation outside. She pointed at the man in the leather jacket in the image, which meant, "Do any of you know this guy?" Everyone shook their heads. There was no power and no internet, so they didn't know who it was. Seeing that the person outside was still shouting at the top of his lungs, Barry naturally couldn't let the crippled Dr. Wales go out to die. With a whoosh, he changed into his combat suit and rushed out. Thea thought about it and didn't stop him. At least she didn't see how powerful the man in the leather jacket was. With the Flash's combat power, he should be able to deal with this kind of small monster easily. Unfortunately, the water mirror spell could only see the image and not hear the sound. The people in the room looked like they were watching a pantomime. They watched Barry and the other party talk nonsense for a while and then directly start fighting. At first, Sia thought that it was just a small matter, so she just looked at it casually. Perhaps the Flash had the same idea as her. He also had the idea of playing with the other party, as if he was watching a monkey show, watching the other party constantly throw electric arcs around.